allegiance in our hearts, shed waters in our voice. The spirit and the flesh, the emotions that arrest. The cerebral will contest, propelling the unrest. Preachers and bandits with means underhanded. The teachers pedantic and lack understanding. So sweep out the sand with the broom in your hand. Stand up, make we burn Babylon. Guess I can give the world to you, the world to you. But the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demons searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. Cause I can give the world to you, the world to you. But the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demons searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. With the semblance of a blaze, with gratitude and rage, we touch another page with delirious delight, impervious to light. This vitality and might encourages the flight. Preachers and bandits with means underhanded, the teachers pedantic and lack understanding. So sweep out the sand with the broom in your hand. Stand up, make we burn Babylon. Guess I can give the world to you, the world to you. But the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demons searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. Guess I can give the world to you, the world to you. But the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demons searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. The world to you, but the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demons searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. Cause I can give the world to you, the world to you. But the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demons searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. What is it that feels insulted, slandered, shamed? What is it that feels pride? You could say we feel it in our guts, we feel it in our chest, but is there something in your heart that gets prideful, that feels a sense of injury over one's name, one's honor, if you will? What is it that reacts to abstract concepts that have to do with your identity? That identity, that thing that feels shame, guilt, slander, pride. That is the you that we are concerned about today, ladies and gentlemen. Merry Christmas. Welcome to my channel. My name is Ike, and over here we talk about being better, doing better, with a strong emphasis on doing. And today we're having some fun. As always, ladies and gentlemen. As always. So, this you, this identity that we just intuited by asking the question, where exactly and what is it exactly that feels disrespected? I say that it is a narrative, it is a story, it is your identity. And the story is a story that is made up of different aspects, part of which you're born into. You're born into a nation, you're born into a family. A nation, a family, a tribe has an ongoing story in and of itself. You come in and you start playing a role in that particular story. There is an aspect to that that feeds into your identity, and that thing which acts in the world, which serves as a motivator for people taking action, that aspect of you is what we're asking about today, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, we have a hypothesis. We have a hypothesis. We're going to have some intellectual fun and discourse out here in this 2020 Christmas day, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you very much for joining. Okay. Thank you very much for joining. That's what we're doing here. That is what we are doing here. Shout out to K Coaching and Judge Dre in the house. Nice to see you in the building, in the cuts, ladies and gentlemen. Shout out to Red Sings the Blues. He said he just sent 3 songs. Definitely subscribe to Red Sings the Blues, ladies and gentlemen. So, now that we've kind of defined the landscape, okay, we're saying, look, why do you exist? Why does that identity thing exist? We're going to try to first and foremost clarify what the question is, but I'll give you my particular hypothesis. My hypothesis is this: you are a story, a narrative, and the reason that the story exists is for the moral of the story. The moral of the story is the reason why you exist. You are a story, and the moral of the story is the reason why you exist. The you that we're going to define earlier when we intuited the you that feels insulted, guilted, shamed, so on and so forth. The narrative part of yourself. What is it not? We're not talking about the physical universe in terms of why it exists. That is a given. We're not talking about the consciousness and why it exists. It's a given. We're not taking a position on whether material gives rise to consciousness or taking a panpsychic view where consciousness pervades all of the universe in and of itself. We're not saying material is primary or consciousness is primary. Consciousness is a given. But this particular soft side of your consciousness that has a story about it, an identity which weaves together your experiences, your tribe, your nation, the circumstances of your birth, so on and so forth, along with certain other economic markers, along with aspects of your chronological life, weaves together a story, a narrative about yourself, always looking back with the benefit of hindsight. That particular story, which is a motivator for action, which does actually feel things as we've described. What is it exactly that feels insulted, shamed, prideful, patriotic? Shout out, shout out, shout out. And we'll take it slowly, obviously, as usual. We will definitely go into this piece in a piecemeal way. Ladies and gentlemen, so let me go ahead and share something. Let me share something. The hypothesis, again, ladies and gentlemen, is that you are a story, a narrative, and the purpose of the story is the moral of the story. However, what we need to do is to ask the question and thoroughly ask and clarify what we mean by you and the story. And then we'll get to why this is a good answer and why we should be asking this question to begin with, right? But it is as simple as the hypothesis states. You are a story, a narrative, and the purpose of the story is the moral of the story. So, state more formally You are a container and a propagator of values. Okay. Now, anyways, so what is this you that we're talking about? Okay. As we said earlier, we're not talking about space, time, and causality. Those are a given. And forgive if there are any typos in this. Forgive me up front if there are any typos. Unforeseen. So, we're not talking about space, time, causality, the universe, why it exists. No, we're not talking about the biology, which is just a subset of physicality in a sense. Not that. We're not even talking about the consciousness aspect. All that is a given. Space, time, causality are a given. Consciousness is a given. But there is this particular aspect of your software, if you will, of your consciousness, okay, that operates in a narrative structure. It's different from drives and instincts and intuitions, okay? It is about an identity which goes along with a storyline, with plots and subplots and so on and so forth. It says, I am a proud American. I am a proud daughter of the X family. The nation, the tribe, the family, each having a story already coming in before you were born that you take a part in and play now a role in. Then there is the selection of certain aspects of your lived experience in order to feel a particular narrative. Like narratives could be the hero narrative, for example, or the victim narrative. Well, this is one that is kind of popular. People like to talk about the victim narrative a lot. But basically, the narrative selects, mainly excluding a lot of things in order to satisfy the plot that is required. In other words, to pick your experiences that say, hey, I've always been a victim because of my situation of birth, where I'm born, tribe born into, socioeconomic, political context, so on and so forth. And then here are the things that happened to me that prove that I am a victim, my victim narrative, or my hero narrative, or my survivor narrative. So that is what we're talking about. The contents of the narrative obviously will include social information. Okay? Shout out to Young Swift in the house. Shout out to Young Swift in the house, ladies and gentlemen. Green Machine in the house, ladies and gentlemen. How is the sound? Give me a one if the sound is okay, ladies and gentlemen. This is the first live broadcast stream with this particular microphone. Dr. Thunder showing love in the house says Merry Christmas to each and every one of you out there. And I got a little bit of the Christmas color going on the jacket here. Young Swift says one. So we are saying, okay, what are we saying? We're having some fun and we said, well, why do you exist? And then we say, well, you are a story, a narrative, and the purpose of the narrative is the moral of the story. The purpose of the story is the moral of the story. The reason why we told the whole story is the moral of the story. And that's why they give you the moral at the end. Like, okay, well, that's why we just went through this whole beginning, journey, end thing, right? Obviously, we're saying, okay, what is this you? I said, what feels hurt? What feels shame? What feels guilt? What feels pride? A narrative structure that takes from social aspects of things, your native aspects, like the country you're born into, the family that you're born into, the time in which you're born, the stories that are already going on about that place, that tribe, that family. You take a part in that particular story. You're given a particular name, and then you interpret your experiences in a particular way, so on and so on and so forth. And that thing, this identity which you form, is quite different from your desires and your drives, like your drive to eat or procreate or whatever. Also different from your instincts and your intuitions. Instincts and intuitions are more akin to perception, means and modes of perceiving things. This is more of a storyline. an identity, which can change and does change and always has the benefit of hindsight when we construct it. When we construct it, ladies and gentlemen. So we're saying, in order to elucidate the point about this particular self that we're talking about, so we're clear about what it is, because we're going to say you and why you exist, and you exist because of this, and you are a story or narrative. We're getting clear as to what this story slash narrative is and what are the inputs. We said social inputs, natal slash native, right? You're born into a particular situation that has its history slash story already going for it, with narratives and roles to play, plots and subplots, and so on and so forth. Word them up. Shout out to Short Cap in the house. Shout out to Nicer in the house, ladies and gentlemen. How are we all doing? How are we all doing? And a Merry Christmas to each and one of you. And thank you, thank you, thank you. And if you have not subscribed, please subscribe, like, subscribe, bell button, all. Share also, ladies and gentlemen. Shout out to Soul Provider. Your soul provider. Soul provider in the house. So, there's social inputs into the self, okay? There are economic conditions and social implications of your physical attributes. For example, okay, he is a warrior type, born into this warrior family. Oh, he also happens to be tall and broad-shouldered and so on and so forth. So there are social implications to physical attributes and so on and so forth. Basically, stories in your head about stories in other people's heads. There is a social aspect to this, okay? And then there is a collection of subjective experience, how you feel, your feelings in your body, the images in your head, the talk in your head, and the memories helps to construct this particular narrative as you go on, right? And also there's a chronology, okay? We're talking about what the story contains and also the narrative structure. What are the things that are inherent about a narrative structure, right? There's going to be confirmation bias because a narrative has to exclude a lot of things. And as you live your lived experience, there's going to be a lot of confirmation bias vis-a-vis you looking at data that confirms your particular identity, that particular you, that thing that, again, is open to slander, shame, guilt, insult. Why is it? Why is it? Okay? And in order to get to the why, we're saying what is the what, ladies and gentlemen. And then an important aspect of this whole thing is to say, well, why ask why? We all know that if we keep on asking the question, why, you get to the point where it's just like, hey, stop. It is what it is just because, right? Because that's how it is. Why becomes a how at some point, right? So we always want to be clear as to, well, are we just asking a silly why question now? Come on, Ike, what do you mean? Even if we're just having some intellectual fun here, but are you serious? What do you mean, why do you exist? First of all, what's this you, which we've just tried to elaborate upon as to what the you is that we're talking about. You is the narrative, the story, the identity. The why, we have to justify the why. Why would we say that there is a why to this? Is this not just one of those silly why questions? Well, let's try to justify why we would ask why, okay? And we're kind of in the position where, let's say we found a tool. We're doing an archaeological dig and we find a tool, and we could ask, well, what is it for? Or we could try to justify that it may be for something by asking what categories of thing could it be. So it seems useful. It does stuff in the world, okay? It
serves as a motivator and a cause for actual events in the world. So we talked about drives and instincts and intuitions before. Those are causes also and motivators in that particular way of looking at things, if one were to talk about cause and effect and so on and so forth. But this particular story, the story about your tribe, your nationality, your identity, the kind of person that you are, your survivor story, your victim story, your hero story, whatever your story is, also is a motivator, also does things in the world. So the question is, why ask why? And we're saying, well, I'm asking why because this stuff, this thing does stuff. Okay. It's not just something that is sitting over there and I'm asking what is it for? It's actually doing stuff out in the world. It is causing people to do things. It is a major motivation. The identity, the story, that you, that aspect of that software that is different from these other aspects, such as drives and instincts, right? So, looks like a tool. It seems like it does something. It moves things out in the world, okay? So you can kind of think of it like a hand. Like, okay, what is a hand for? It is uniquely identifiable as separate from other things that may surround it. And it actually does stuff out here. So the warrant, the permit that we're giving ourselves to ask the why question, which we know could be sometimes a silly question, is we're saying, we found this thing, looks like a tool, looks like it's doing stuff out here, right? So why? Because if we know the use of something, and this is to give this whole intellectual fun exercise we're having some kind of a purpose, it's because if you know the use of something, then you can avoid abuse. Well, let me get a one in the chat if that last statement is connecting in a certain sense. We're saying there's something out here. We're looking at it akin to a hand or something, some kind of a tool. Okay. If you know its use, you can avoid its abuse. Because things definitely can be used for multiple purposes. They can be used for right purposes and for wrong purposes. Okay. We're saying that there is this you thing that exists that feels hurt, shame, guilt. It feels pride, patriotic. It feels put upon, it feels victimized, it has a story, a narrative structure to it with a basic theme. It does stuff. And we're saying, is it possible that it is for something? And if we know what it is for, perhaps can we not put it to its best use and or at least avoid misuse? Yes, it is fun. So, since we are saying, okay, I'll give you that, Ike. Okay, it is tool like. It actually does do stuff in the world. It is separate from these other pieces of software, which we are calling on the instinct side, on the drive side, on the desire side. It's a little different from that. Those are a little quicker. Those are not so linguistic. They are not linguistic, those guys, like your drive. Hunger is not very adept in language and story and history and patriotism. No, hunger is just hunger, okay? So those other sides are not as linguistic. They're not story based. We're talking about your story, and we're saying that it is sufficiently distinct within your consciousness that we can say, well, is there something that it is there for? And something is good for or is used for what it is best for. This is something that it is a very simple intuitive thing, right? And it sounds like a tautology. circular. But in Plato's Republic, Socrates clarified this particular thing or used this particular thing in an argument where he said, well, something is used for what it is best for, right? So, for example, you can use a spoon. Okay, let's use a spoon example. We're doing an archaeological dig and we find a spoon and we're trying to find out what is this thing used for. Okay, what can it be used for is a useful question to ask. And then what it is best for is what we will say that it is used for. For example, a spoon can be used to eat or, sip your soup or something, but it can also be used to dig a pool. But is it the best for digging a pool? Wouldn't a shovel and a pickaxe be better? Right? Just like a shovel is also not the best for sipping your tea. So we're not going to say that's what it's for. We say something is for what it is best for. That point may seem like a trivial point, but I would say, yes, it seems trivial because it is trivial. But it needs to be kind of clearly stated in order to continue to give ourselves the warrant for why we are engaging upon this little fun intellectual trip. Okay? Why do we have the right to ask? And how can we ask? How can we find out what something is used for? What can it be used for? And what it is best for is what we'll say that it is used for. Because things have multiple purposes, but that which they are the best for, the most optimized for, is what we generally will say is the use. So a spoon is for soup. We don't add digging pools to the list, even though under crazy situations, you can resort to using spoons for digging pools. Anyway, so basically, in trying to figure out what it is, well, let's talk about, well, how is it different from the other things in the neighborhood, okay? What is it not good for? Okay, we already said that things like instincts are faster. Things like drives are not linguistic. They don't have a storyline. They just move you to do things. The drive to eat, drink, procreate, using these words like drive and so on and so forth in the most broad stroke possible way, right? And we're trying to, in the sense that we're using it in order to distinguish them from what we're calling this story aspect. This story aspect, which says Ike is this particular type of person. Ike does this thing, does not do that thing. There is a narrative, there is a story. You are a story, and the purpose of the story is the moral of the story, is the hypothesis, and we're fleshing out why we have the warrant to even ask the question and also to elaborate upon the particular context within which the self exists. The self that we're talking about. Ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, hopefully we all have a very good or had a very good 25th. It was a chill day over here. I had a nice lonely Christmas. The way I enjoyed that too. Let me not ruffle any feathers. And likewise, out there, Chaos Rain and Nicer and Dr. Thunder, hopefully you guys had a great Christmas as well. Okay? And we are saying, why do you exist? And we're saying, what is this you that exists that we're talking about? What gives us the warrant to ask the question? We have been going deep into describing it so that we can back up, verify, interrogate the proposition that since you are a story, that the purpose of you is the moral of the story. And what does that imply for us? What does it imply? It must imply such or some behavioral or ethical. There must be something ethical, behavioral, or such to glean from it. Some kind of a understand of not abusing, as we said, because if we can say something is used for something, then we can not, or we can at least avoid abuse. Okay? We can avoid abuse of the self. We can avoid abuse of your identity, is the fun little game we're playing here. It's a fun little game that we're playing here, and I hope that we all get the spirit of being intellectually playful. Human beings are best at play, and play is the height of everything. And a lot of times it is the ends towards which other human endeavors are directed towards furthering. Okay? Playing, being masters, throwing things around, using things for our leisure, pleasure, so on and so forth. And over here, we're having an intellectual play that says, what are you for? What is the purpose of you? Why do you exist? That thing that feels hurt, guilt, shame, prideful. It has an identity, a story, part of a family story, part of a national story, part of a story which you particularly give yourself. You have a theme, you have a victim narrative, a hero narrative, some particular story that you carry around with you that is a cause of action in you and in the world amongst us. What is that for? And we have said that it has in its, as part of the tapestry out of which your narrative weaves. Okay, as part of the material, it takes material and it weaves a narrative, a tapestry, a bias, a story, right, that takes from social aspects of yourself, from economic aspects of yourself, from the bloodline and family aspects of yourself, and then also from your memories and some aspects of the chronology, but leaving out most. I am a victim. That could be a narrative. And then you pick out particular situations in your life, experiences, arrange them in a particular order, and say, yes, you see, this is why I am a victim. You put yourself into a bigger picture of other victim narrative, which has to do with particulars about a group that you are born into, a story, a victim story that is, that started before even you were born. You put yourself also as part of that. That is part of your identity. It goes into that theme, victim, and you construct it out of that. And you also then experience the world. In other words, there are certain feelings that you will be attracted to, and certain feelings that you would be averse to, and certain interpretations that you will have of your world that is based upon this particular story. And the loop works that way, okay? The story paints your perception, and then your perception is used to feed into the story, right? You put on the rose colored glasses, and then you can tell rose colored stories. Ladies and gentlemen, let us see, let us see, let us see. Checking for you in the building. Shout out to James in the house. Indeed, 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 indeed. Shout out to Complex Design in the house. Okay. Let's get to the meat and potatoes of this thing. You're making a claim. We have understood now the particular playhouse that you are saying that we are in. We're in that playhouse where we are saying that that story, that identity, that you, that thing, that particular aspect, we've defined it. We are aware of it. We know it. Okay. We're playing around the idea that it has a use. Uses could be something that it is best for. Use could at least help us avoid abuse. Use can help us tailor efficiency and bring about the purpose perhaps more fully of our entire being, right? To get that synchronicity going, to get that thing running. So we're saying that it is about values. It is about values, that the moral of the story, in other words, underneath it all, that particular storyville, that part of your identity that is based on the stories, we said is best for the propagation of values. Oh, Ike, when did we say that? Well, we said that in the negative because we compared it with other aspects of that software. Where, like we said, there are these kinds of drives, instincts, and intuitions, okay? Instincts and intuitions are more akin to perceptions, ways of perceiving the world. They're fast. You know, we have instincts and intuitions about things, mainly unconscious and so on and so forth. We also have drives, drive to procreate, drive to eat. So those kinds of things are different from this particular identity thing, which tends to be a slower thing, a more of a narrative thing, more of a linguistic thing, something that's more dependent upon where you're born, who you're born to, what particular stories are already going on, and then other things about how you are interpreting what is going on out there in the world based on the color of glasses that you've already put on, right? So we're saying that at the end or at underneath this particular thing, the most valuable thing is the moral of the story, such as honesty, for example. That this particular aspect of your psyche that has the capacity to hold a story and for you to have a story and to curate your story with others around you as well, family, and so on, and so on, and so on, that it is there and it is best for, okay, what it best does, and seemingly what it only does, no other aspect of your psyche does this, is keep keep your hierarchy of values. Keep your hierarchy of overall interpretation of that which is good to pursue and that which is not good to pursue. Excuse me. Oh yeah. So we're saying that that is what it is best for. That this particular thing is all about holding values, the definition of ends worth pursuing, as opposed to drives and instincts and so on and so forth. Those do something that are quite different. That this thing is best for holding values. We're fleshing out the hypothesis now. The hypothesis is that you are a story, you are a narrative, and the reason why you exist is the moral of the story. The purpose of the narrative is the moral of the narrative. And focusing on the moral of the narrative and everything that furthers the ends of the moral of the narrative is akin to more being in line with use and not abuse, more in line with efficiency, and so on and so on and so on. So goes the argument, right? So goes the argument. We're saying it is an evolutionary adaptation, an evolutionary artifact. that is out there in the world doing things. It is a cause and a motivation for people to do things. People out of parts of their storyline, such as nationality, patriotism, so on and so forth, will go out and fight in wars, suffer and bring suffering to, so on and so on and so on and so on. Not to even mention all the other plots and subplots, characters and roles that we play that feed into this narrative structure that is in itself a unique source of impetus for action, a cause, a motivator. And it does something else quite different from just drives, instincts, intuitions, so on and so forth. So, what is it good for? We say that it is best for the holding of values, and the values are the morals of the stories. And it is best that you focus on the moral of the story. Is what this will kind of lead us to, right? Yeah. Perhaps. Hence the question, what to do about this? Exactly. They'll fight in wars because their fathers and grandfathers did. In other words, we will fight in wars because our fathers and grandfathers did. And there are many kinds of wars. And we are all human beings. A good thing to practice is to always include yourself in all the aspects of what we may consider to be natural, right? Yes. You know what? While we continue, I want to open up. I think since this is our, or this is my little lonely Christmas show, seems like it'll be fun to open it up while I continue here. So feel free to join the show, ladies and gentlemen, as we go on, elaborated upon why you exist. Why are you here? Okay? You are here as a holder of values. You are here as a unit, an evolutionary unit, just like the individual is the unit that plays the game of survive and reproduce, right? You look at the whole ecosystem and you try to look at a particular important unit that moves things along. The evolutionary unit, an important evolutionary unit, is the individual level. Okay? It's obviously the level of the genes as well, and so on and so forth. But basically, the story level, your identity level, is where there is a holding of values, and values can be tested out in the competitive and cooperative arena of the ecosystem. In other words, out there in the land of competition and cooperation and survival, many values have to play themselves out. Many storylines have to play themselves out. And the point of any storyline, of which you have an identity and your identity is a storyline, as we just described, is to play out a particular value set in this competitive landscape of different value sets. And the most important aspect of that story, is the value set that it represents. Therefore, what is one to do about it? One thing that one could say is you can look at every plot and every subplot and try to remove every superfluous meaning redundant and perhaps useless aspects of the story that don't really have to do with the moral of the storyline, okay? Like, I would say, or let me ask this. The reason why you don't want superfluous things is because the bigger this story is, the more grandiose and crazy this story is, the more prone to attack you are. Because recall, we said that your storyline, your identity, is a handle by which the world can move you. Okay? You can be hurt in the storyline. You can feel shame and guilt and pride and so on and so forth in the storyline. It is in the storyline that it happens. Therefore, if you have a more succinct and concise storyline, a storyline, for example, that does not depend so much on materialism, for example, right? Then that's a way of shedding away areas in which you're just exposed to being attacked, damaged, controlled, little hooks in you to control you, right? But you do have to have a backbone to the storyline. Let's say, for example, I am an honest man, and that's kind of your story. Well, then you see how lean that is and doesn't have much baggage. Okay? You only leave yourself hurt, open to be attacked on the honesty front, as opposed to all the other fronts, right? And that's a useful word there, fronts and fronting, right? y'all, y'all fronting. Ladies and gentlemen, as we go along, or before we continue here, I would like to complex design, I believe, in the house. Can you say something to see if I got my audio?
That's me, man. Can you hear me?
Yes, 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 I can.
Hey, happy
Well,
holidays, Ike. How you doing, man?
well, I'm very fine, thank you. I'm having
Hey,
a,
you know what?
I'm okay.
Let me.
Yeah, you're Borgin, and you're probably saying that you wanted to call back in. Young Swift says, "Hello, Complex."
Yeah, can you hear me? Okay.
It's better now. You
I
were
don't think.
working out a little bit earlier.
Yeah, I'm gonna switch. I'm gonna switch my headphones. Okay.
Excellent. Okay, cool, cool.
Okay.
So while complex design shows up or comes back, Young Swift says, meaning going deeper. Yes, that is one way to look at it, in the sense that there is this thing. It may be a spoon. It is best for only taking soups, but you're putting all this crap on it and you're abusing it and you're leaving yourself open to attack and damage and so on and so on and so on and so on. Mr. Red.
What's up? Merry Christmas, man.
Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas. Okay, while we wait for complex design to come back, what you got for us, sir? Was I or am I too far gone over here in my on my own land? Just like, oh, who cares about this question, Ike? You're over here
I mean,
hypothesizing and speculating in
I would
deep
say,
waters.
I would say it's a vague question. I mean, it's not a vague question. It's not even a vague answer. I think the thing is that it depends on the individual. I would believe, man, because I mean, for me, the way I think about it, and this kind of goes into like that whole stay on your purpose type thing. It's more or less for me. I would say on my end, it would just be just what is it that you truly exist for individually outside of who you are as a human being, because I think a lot of people they say, oh, stay on your purpose, but they don't really know what purpose means. And that's why I don't really say that to people, because it's like, well, here in the crimson capsule they always talk about, well, stay on your purpose. A lot of people are lost when it comes to that. What is purpose if you don't know what that really is outside of what you are built to do anyway?
Hmm. Hmm. Let me ask you this. Are you hearing something in the background?
I do hear echoes. Hmm.
Okay, hold on one second. I may be. Let's see what's going on here. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da.
Oh, oh, it's not my channel. But yeah, man.
It might be for a couple of seconds.
Oh, okay. What is it? Is it your mixer or what is it?
Yeah, so there is a window open playing.
Oh, uh, uh. Oh well, I guess while he's gone, everyone's invited to December 31st on my channel. Definitely gonna have an end of the year shindig for all my peoples. So you guys are invited to that. So yeah. Uh, how you guys doing? He is playing something in the background. Yeah, yeah. I think when it comes down to that, um, uh, I don't know. I don't know what that is. I don't know. It's not me because again, it couldn't be me. But I don't know. But yeah, man. Yeah. Everyone enjoying the holiday? Everyone enjoying the holiday? I had a lot to eat, man. I had like two things of steak. Uh there's Lion Legal. He says put me on. I can't. I can't do that. I'm just a guy that's in the stream.
Yeah. It happens. I thank you very much, and my apologies. Can you hear me?
Don't worry about it, man. No, now I don't hear the echo anymore. Oh, no, okay, now all right.
Oh, good. So let's go back to complex design. He came in first, and thank you very much for your comments and for holding it down there, Mr. Red Sings the Blues.
No
And
problem.
let's go through this rotation real quick. Complex design, what you got for us? So you switched your headphones?
Yeah, I'm all good. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
I had some real janky Bluetooth joints and they just were not working. They were not the business.
All right.
Yeah. So happy holidays, everyone.
Yeah, happy holidays, man.
Thank you. Same to you.
Yeah. The question is, who are you? Is that what you're asking?
The question is, why are you?
Why
Or you
are
like you don't know the question.
Okay. The question says why you exist.
why you exist? There you go.
Yeah.
Why you exist? Okay.
And then in order to get into that, I had to explain the you that I'm talking about and what the question is not, and so on and so forth. And then
Yeah.
so on. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna kind of go on the purpose premise, right? Because
Yeah,
I
definitely.
think was it Red Sings the Blues? He was kind of
Right.
talking about it. And Ike, I think when I came into your live stream, you were speaking to that, right? So I
Mhm.
mean, I think it's kind of like one of those sort of conundrums, right? The two feed into one another, like what your purpose is and why you exist,
Mhm.
right? One is you discover what the purpose is, and then two, through that discovery, you see why it is that you exist, because through that you see what kind of impact that you have, right? It sort of validates your existence.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So, I mean that's kind of it's interesting. You know what I notice. I'm a Gen X. I'm 43.
Okay.
Right. So growing up, we kind of went through the trial by fire type of thing, right? Where we sort of threw caution to the wind, threw a middle finger to what our parents said, and learned the hard way.
Mhm.
And it was through that where you allowed those processes to kind of carve you, to sort of chisel you. And then as a result of that, that fortified who it was that you were. Right. And that's kind of how me and, like the circle of people that I've come up with, how we came up. Because a lot of the people I came up in the LA music scene, and a lot of people that I came up with now are kind of on the upper echelons of that scene.
Hmm.
So And it was really sort of like the same process that kind of created that.
Mhm.
Whereas I think what happens in like this current context, social media has a really insidious way of making people insecure.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So it's really hard to, you're always questioning yourself, like the high value conversation, for example. I mean, it's like
Well,
it's utterly amazing.
if,
Um,
if I can
but
chime
but
in.
yeah, I just wanted to say that's what I wanted to say to that. I think it's a process of sort of like initiation and discovery, and then there's a validation and refinement that then comes as a result of that.
Okay.
I think the truth of the matter is nobody really knows why they exist, because if we all think that we exist for a particular purpose, most people would say they exist to achieve great goals or to achieve wealth. However, you cannot have a situation where everybody is wealthy, because then wealth does not exist, because then your buying power is essentially nil or greatly abated by the fact that other people are at the same financial status. And we can't have people who all exist to be TV stars or all exist to experience success in a particular area. The fact of the matter is, I think that complex design touched on a point which is probably true. People exist to fulfill a purpose that they can discover over time. And once they discover what that purpose is, they derive joy from doing something difficult and doing it well. If you look at studies that have been done on psychology, nobody is happy from simply winning the lottery or
Mm.
getting a lot of wealth that they've not worked for. Over time, they become depressed. They don't feel that they've achieved anything. What they truly gain happiness and joy from is doing a task that is difficult and being able to do it well. And that is the actual definition of happiness. If you ask a lot of people, and psychological studies have confirmed this point.
Hmm. I would say to piggyback on CMP, I'm gonna just call him CMP just for the short end. I would say when it comes down to what he said, he's a Gen Xer. So and you know that year, that those like the 60s and 70s really interest me, because those were the years, right? And we had this talk not too long ago on with me and Ike, and the thing that really
Well,
surprises
well,
me.
Gen X would be 80s and 90s.
Okay, so yeah, the 80s and 90s. So
Yeah.
I would say from the okay, so from the boomers to the Gen Xers, it was like, and my parents are actually Gen Xers. So it was like, yeah, they threw caution to the wind because it was a different time. It was civil rights and second wave feminism, but also you can also say that with even with that, right? With certain things on their scale, they actually when they rebelled, they actually saw the world for really what it was. So then, turning over to the millennial, Gen Z type, they tried to keep them safe, right? Because the thing about this generation, the reason why I get so much flack is because they say, oh, everyone gets a trophy, everyone like everyone gets a trophy, everyone's special in what they are and stuff like that. But when you rebel against nature and stuff like that, you actually see it's like quote unquote taking the red pill. You find out the reality of what life really is. So when they rebelled, when they did all those things and they saw the truth, we like when they had kids, they tried to protect them from that world. And then also you have to take into an account that, again, technology. So when millennials and Gen Z, when they start growing up, they're the second generation with technology. And when that started to happen, like no one like 90s, I guess you can say early 2000s, mid 2000s kids, right? They were not going outside as much. They were playing video games and stuff like that. They've been coddled and sheltered for so long. They never had that they never had those answers to those kinds of questions. They never rebelled against their family, and now you have a generation of kids, right, that have no purpose, that don't even know why they even exist outside of materialism and sex. You know what I'm saying?
I would like to ask Complex something. You said that you're 43 years old now. Looking back on your life, do you feel happy about all of the decisions that you made in your life and the stage that you are at now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Currently, right now,
No,
yeah.
no.
There are
Complex
things.
Design. Complex Design said that he was, 43
No,
years old.
Yeah, I
So,
think he was asking me, do I feel? You said, do I feel happy about
Oh,
that?
you're asking him, not me. Oh, go
yeah.
ahead.
Do you feel, looking back on your life, do you feel that you've achieved what you'd like to achieve by this age? The goals that you.
I would, that's an interesting question. I would say, let me see how I answer that. I would say yes and no. I would say that there's certain things that I have achieved and I have experienced, right? And so because of that, that's prepped me to experience the things that I haven't yet.
Okay, and the reason I ask you,
Because my the book's not done yet.
okay, the reason I ask is because you seem to, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you seem to have an idea of what you would quantify as success based on the fact that you stated you were around other people in the music industry who had gained success.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, based on that, one could make the assumption that, like, maybe you feel you had not gained the level of success as your peers, which you would have liked to.
Well, let me put it to you like this. I see in my head, I think so. I don't think in terms of limits, right? So I don't know what my peers. I don't know. What I can say is that there's things that they have achieved that a lot of people haven't, right? So I can gauge their success based upon that. Now, some of them, these are dear friends of mine that I've been friends with for like 30 years, right? And we literally think the same because we grew up together, right? So I already know how they think. So I already know that everything is just basically benchmarks in life, and that's how I view things. I view things as benchmarks. I don't really look at things as like as an end goal. That's why I think that the notion of what a high value man is I think is dubious because that can be limitless.
You think so?
Yeah, I do think so because who's to say, like, did someone tell Jeff Bezos like how much it is ultimately he was going to make in life? Or did he go about determining that for himself?
I thought the concept of a high value man was that there's a base level of income that you have to have based on a particular form of.
What I'm
In addition to that, you would have to have a social circle
yeah.
that also elevates you to the status of being a high value man. So
Right.
I sense a little sarcasm.
I do. That's why. That's why I'm trying to hold my laughter in, because I totally get it. I get the facetiousness. I was gonna say, I mean, for all of that, if I were to compare him to Bezos, it's like, try again. It's subjective. That's the thing, right? Like it's totally.
Sorry.
Okay,
go ahead.
Well, hold on 1 second. Lots of things have been said vis-a-vis this particular topic, and also we've branched out into many that are ancillary to it and tangential to it. And that is part of the reason why I wanted to do the stream today. It's kind of just open intellectual free flow of surrounding this thing about identity. And just begun to talk about, different aspects. Someone talk about success vis-a-vis your peers, for example, right? And that is definitely, these are the social aspects that go into that particular story that we would assign to being more or less successful, and so on and so forth. And the whole thing about hierarchies is just to kind of put a capstone on that whole high value conversation is hierarchies all fit into other hierarchies, right?
Yep.
So,
Yep.
and people can claim that I am taking, for example, like I say, you can take the hierarchies of the priestly hierarchy, for example, and talk about morality and so on and so forth. And maybe in the past there were social structures such as going into and being a monk and so on and so forth that would support that, that can kind of verify so on and so forth. But it's not very, you don't go around calling yourself a moral man, right? It's kind of by definition, right?
Yeah.
You don't do that, right? So that is that's a particular hierarchy. It has its own rules and so on and so forth. The merchant class hierarchies, right, which have to do with the market, usefulness, value, connections, blah blah blah, measured, exchange, dollar signs, right? There is that set. So if somebody says something within that set, it's like, okay, cool. That's where you've defined it, and we understand that that is the subset under which, or this is a subset of that particular merchant class system of values. Then it is fine. Because there's also a warrior class system of values where you get into the alpha, the military, the valor, the I'll stab you, F your money.
There's a philosophical class, an educational class.
Exactly. So it's like, the point is, what I find to be a little messy is when there becomes a mixing and matching, where if somebody just says, okay, I'm talking about these particular, let's say again, mercantile, or not mercantile, but the merchant class, right? System of values. Don't challenge it with priestly values because they're in different lanes.
They're different. They're different.
Right,
They're totally
right.
different. They're totally different.
Exactly.
Yeah. And the other thing, in defense of people who go out and make it out in the real world, let's say, not the real world, sorry, the world of
The real world.
the world of the market, let's say, right? People who go out there and test an idea, test their consistency, test their hard work in the market and get rewards for it. They know that it takes certain virtues, that it's not, and this goes back to the topic, right? Because I'm saying that your whole identity, the kind of the reason for a story, your identity, which is a story, is the moral of the story. The moral of the story is about certain virtues, right? So you do have to practice for a certain amount of time, some hard work, some consistency, some. It's called the Protestant ethic, or what we call work ethic. You know, that whole system of ethics still exists, and it's not to be poo-pooed necessarily offhand, right? What would you guys say?
No, it's not to be poo-pooed at all. Actually, it's to be dissected and examined, right? I mean, how do we best leverage what we're talking about here? So that would mean that as I would say maybe even from hell prior to conception, first of all, we're analyzing and diagnosing who it is that we may be creating this other human with, right? And then how we're going to bring this human up. How are we going to foster their talents? How are we going to identify and determine their passions, their interests? And then how are we going to foster that into something that they can grow into adulthood and then make an impact in the world? There's an actual process and a pathway to this. And it starts with parents, right? It's not left up.
Completely agree.
These things aren't left up to chance. Let's just take, for example, the guy who I think is the person of the year, in my opinion, Lewis Hamilton, a brother from the UK who just won his 7th world title in Formula One, the pinnacle of motorsport, one of the most difficult thing to do in sports. Okay, and it was his father who saw it in him at an early age, right, to put an RC car in his hand. And then from there, to put him into a kart. And then from there, Mercedes takes an interest in him. And then they put him into an F3 car, and then into an F2 car, and then into an F1 car, where he's raced with Mercedes his entire career, won 7 world titles, and basically it's him and Michael Schumacher who sit atop the board as the greatest of all time. And that was his dad looking at his son and saying, yeah, he's got a knack for that.
Red sings the blues. I'm sorry for keep hitting the microphone. Hope that doesn't sound too horrible on you guys. And you brought up parents earlier, in the conversation, vis-a-vis the particular generation going
Oh yeah.
wild, and then they saw the particular consequences, and they are now protecting. They're raising their children in a certain way, which swung the pendulum far away. Blah blah blah. And also now, complex design just mentioned it starts with parents, right?
Yeah.
So, well, what do you have to say about what complex design said, or does it merge with your view of what is possible in terms of forging that story in a healthy way? Because, go ahead.
No, I think what he's trying to say, I do agree with. I mean, I will say I do agree with it, and I also agree with it to a certain extent, because when it comes to parents, whom are the parents, right? Because the thing about parents is that, yeah, there are good parents out there, right? They will try to help the child to get to where that child wants to be or needs to be, and then there are parents that won't listen, and they'll try to they'll try to live as that child, right? That's why if you watch certain what were those child pageant shows, the mothers try
Hmm.
to live as their little daughters, right? They dress up their daughters for the validation of other people, right? So I mean, I do agree with you. I'm not saying I don't, but it there is a certain extent in which to I agree with that, because again, it all depends on how those parents view themselves, right? And how they view their offspring. That's how they view themselves is how they're going to treat their offspring. You know what I'm saying?
I think that you both agree actually, because I think that you're both saying the same thing. Complex design was saying that uh, uh, the right upbringing of the parents will ensure that the child is successful. You are saying that bad parenting can lead to problems for the child. So you're on the same page, definitely. And I think that if you actually look at a lot of people who make it into the prison, population, and you look at their background, a lot of them are not educated or might be illiterate. They don't really come from nuclear families as well. They've come from harsh backgrounds, and the parenting is lacking in a lot of instances. So parenting is incredibly crucial, because the parents you have will determine what area of a town you live in, whether you live in the high income area, the low income area, the middle income area. It will determine if you have any problems with school, if the parent is able to now ensure that that child gets an extra tutor, or is educated, sufficiently to ensure that they can enter higher education, and can also take care of the any emotional needs that that child has. So, fortunately or unfortunately, I think the influence of parents is probably the most crucial factor in whether a child will end up being successful in life. It is so important that it cannot be understated.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
let me introduce this. And you know what? Why Red Signal Blue? Why don't you go ahead and please, if you will, read what Nicer said, the question for the panel, and then I'll address something, and I'll open it up to you guys to answer that,
All
if
right.
you will.
So she asks, how do you handle the advancements placed on us in this beginning stage of the digital age, like watches, for example? So what do you mean, like how do we as content creators, how do we handle that? What do
Well,
you
I would say, well, as human beings, right, within the context of this particular conversation, right? So this question will be the way in which the outside world, let's say, for example, technology, time, let's say, keeping of time, which is a technology, putting something external out there,
oh,
tick, 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 ticking away, and how that changes the way we both view ourselves and also the storyline of our lives. Because there is a non-linear, and I'll say this and I'll open it up to you guys. What I'm saying is not necessarily answering the question, just kind of shedding some light in the area, right? So the area that we're talking about is, well, the changing of our particular ways of seeing ourselves vis-a-vis technology, like the watch, beginning with the watch, and then now all the way through to the smartphones and so on and so forth. That we may want to, and to the point of parenting correctly, we may want to be able to have some kind of a roadmap as to what are the things that are most valuable in terms of the self. And in this particular case, for this conversation, the storyline that we're trying to uphold. And I'm saying, okay, well, a guardrail is to look at the self, the story, that whole thing, whether it be national, tribal, family line, and then also the particular story and themes that we put upon ourselves, such as survivor or victim, or so on and so forth. That it should be about something, right? There should be some guardrail. And I'm saying, well, my guardrail will be that it's about the moral of the story. It's about this one particular value. And therefore, I'm answering the question now. How do you handle how these, different kinds of technological change and so on and so forth, accept our perceptual framework, is to have above and beyond abstract values that abstract by definition meaning they're above, they're kind of they spread out and take care of things regardless of the changing of the environment, right? So that's kind of what I would say is I tend to look for asking questions such as this, like the question which I'm asking here, why do you exist? And then going into it and defining very clearly what the you is, where it resides within consciousness there. It's not the drives and the instincts and the intuitions. It's more of the storyline, blah, blah, blah. It can be abused. Can it be used? What is it good for? What is it best for, right? So that regardless of the changing environment, I can then act accordingly. So who wants to attack that question first, I guess?
I will. I think that it brings up an important point. Technology is changing the world in ways that people have not appreciated. And there's a book about this called Superintelligence by Nicholas Bostrom. Superintelligence, that's the name of the book. And it talks about the advent of AI and the fact that as opposed to prior technological advances, AI is such where you can get a computer system that can learn what to do as opposed to be told by human beings. And the problem is that for a lot of low-skilled jobs, AI has the potential to wipe out these jobs in their entirety. The issue is the speed at which technology will be able to be imposed in the workplace. And it's not as fast as people think. It's not going to happen in the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. The book talks about the fact that it takes a long time to get to the point where computers can do things without human input. Even the most intelligent computers created by tech companies, they have to constantly employ people to put the information into these systems. But there will come a time when they don't even have to do that, probably after 30 years or so. And at that point, a lot of industries will cease to exist. So how will people deal with that? I think that there could be a lot of unemployment, could be greater inequality, and it will certainly raise the prospect of a difficult and a trying time for a lot of people.
I'll take it next. For nicest question, let me just get that back up real quick. How do you handle the advancement? So I would say like it's either you accept the advances or you reject them. A lot of people, like I've met a lot of people in New York that have accepted a lot of these technological advances, yet they don't seem to understand how they can be used as tools rather than as weapons. But whereas certain people that have rejected certain technologies, they use the technologies that they have as tools rather than weapons. So, a lot of people accept technology for the advancement of society because the society is already programmed to go in advance, right? We see progression as this new thing that we're supposed to get, we're supposed to buy, and we're supposed to have because we're human beings. We're becoming obsolete. Our purposes are certain. Our purposes are not in for certain, right? Because like this guy said, what was your name, man? I forget his name.
Who?
But what
Me?
was that? Yeah.
Lion Legal.
Okay, so what Lion just said, damn. You said something good and I really had it. But
I will say something good.
No, but no, but the problem is, I think with technology today is that people are just using it as they're just accepting it just to accept it, and because they've accepted all of these advancements, they're losing out on their own reasoning on to live. They just know that the technology is going to take care of them rather than work together with said technology. And for me, I use like for honestly, man, I don't even use technology as much. However, the only time when I'm actually high tech is when I'm at my job, right? I when I work certain sound jobs, certain mixers I use, a lot of etc boards I have to use. Like the only time when I'm really high tech is if I'm doing a show. That's the only time when I'm required. But outside of this, like outside of my podcast, outside of what I do, I'm pretty low tech because I reject certain things about technology in my own life because I don't want technology again to go back into my reason of existing. Like I don't want that to take away my reason for existing, which is to be a human being. You know what I'm saying?
Complex design. Do you have anything to add to this?
Okay, let me see here. Let me read the question because based on, let me see.
I'll put the first part of the question back up, and then the second part.
Okay. How do you handle advances placed on us in this beginning stage of the digital age? Okay. I would say that my position is probably going to run counter to what you've heard from the other two panelists here. I'm a technocrat. I am an avowed technocrat. Okay. I actually run a technocratic platform called the Black Brain Trust. And it's solely based on fourth industrial revolution based topics. So everything that has to do with from space and technology to geopolitics to economics to everything in between.
How far do you take it? Do you go as far as the transhuman level, or if you know what I mean?
Yeah. We go there fully because here's the reality.
Good.
The reality of it is that now I take it as far as industry. That's as far as I take it. Right. So let's say, for example, if you were to go back like 2-3 years ago, when we used to talk about space mining and stuff like that, people thought we were crazy. Okay. Now, you go look at some of the articles that have just been published in the last couple of weeks on space mining. Okay. So it's not, we okay. People thought we were crazy when we were talking about concepts like UBI. Okay. 3 years ago, 4 years ago on YouTube. Everybody thought we were crazy, right? Guess what? It's conversation. When we were talking about blockchain and cryptocurrency 3-4 years ago, people thought we were crazy. Okay. So the reality is that I guess the brother was right. There's an acceptance or you reject it. However, that's not the position I take on it. Where it's an acceptance or a rejection. The position I take as a technocrat is I see us as a people who have actually mastered technology and then willed it in industry for our benefit and gain. I see it from a completely different angle. I don't even see it. I don't see it from a acceptance or a rejection. I see it from a mastery.
Okay, so let me ask you this, Complex, and it just came to mind, not to put you on the hot seat or anything.
You're good.
So, but the basic kind of scientific question, or no, it's a kind of a logical argumentation type question, which is, well, what will have to happen, or is there some kind of evidence? What would I have to show you? What will have to be true? What will have to happen in order for you not to, or in order for you to be disabused of this notion that we do have mastery? right? So what will be a sufficient assailment on your argument? Like, what evidence will be out there for which you would say, okay, you know what, if this is true, if this actually happens, then now I believe that indeed we do not have mastery over this thing. Maybe these other arguments that are out here about arguments that are a little bit more pessimistic, let's say, are true. So what is that thing?
I would say that here's what it is. We're actually in a reset period, right? So you're actually in a period to stake your claim. You're kind of in a 0 hour kind of period, if you will. Okay, so see, the reality is this: if you look at it in terms of ecological balance, okay, if the seesaw was high on one end and low on the other end, ultimately what ends up having to happen here is that the end that was on the high end has to go to the low end. The end that was on the low end has to go to the high end, right?
Okay.
So if you were at the low end at one point, and then things go in upheaval, then that would suggest that the low end is now going on the high end. So it really then becomes a matter of perspective at this point. You have to think about what your existence has been up until this point. Let's speak to this, right? It's always been an existence where it's largely been something where it's been skewed against you. And then you all of a sudden find yourself at this point in time where the whole situation that had largely been skewed against you this whole time is now in a chaotic state. Take a hint. Get a clue. This is why I say, okay, well, now would be the perfect time to master the technologies and invest in all of the things that would enrich us going forward. Perhaps this is the wish or the prayer, right, that's been answered this whole time. I don't know.
I have a counter view. I think that there is almost no way to have mastery of technology, given the fact that AI is expected to be so intelligent that the human mind cannot match it. You can only have mastery of something that you can control.
Right. And so you have to understand who creates AI. And so again, my position is that you be the one who wields it.
Okay,
it's going to be. You have to understand that AI. Well, you got to understand that AI, as an industrial application, and these are things that we spent years discussing this stuff on the Brain Trust to break down. And so there's people on the that are part of the Brain Trust collective that actually write AI algorithm. One individual, you can actually look him up on YouTube. He actually makes content on it. His name is Engineering Cannabis. You can look him up. He's like an expert on this shit stuff. I'm sorry, pardon my French. So he's like an expert on this stuff. And what I'm saying is that this stuff is going to be employed and deployed on behalf of corporate interests at the end of the day. Its usage in society is going to benefit corporate interest of some way, shape, or form. And what I'm saying is that you have to have that corporate interest. Do you get what I'm saying?
Right. So you are saying that essentially people have to invest in a lot of companies.
I mean, either here's the thing. Either like I said, either you become the people who actually are deploying it, or you succumb to it.
Okay. Let me. Yes, I see the rubric that you're drawing. You're saying, okay, I'm in this land of realpolitik, real stuff happens. It's crazy out here. It's the law of the jungle. Of course, stuff can go wrong, and this thing almost is inevitable. So get in line and start formulating how you're going to participate, right, in this particular thing, because it's not really going anywhere. But what I would ask is there an outside concern, right, that a caution that is removed from whether or not who controls it, those kinds of things? Doesn't matter who is controlling it, who's using it, and who's wielding it against whom. But
Mhm.
the caution about it running away and getting away with us from us, and we no longer have control at some point in the future, sometime X in the future.
A lot of
What is
people
the
have
validity of that concern?
a lot of people have actually commented on this before. Elon Musk has
Mhm.
essentially offered views on this several times, and he stated that this is a bad thing. It has to be heavily regulated as well because it will be difficult to control. Once you have something that can think for itself,
Mhm.
you don't have control because if an entity can think for itself, it will make its own like decisions. And
Mhm.
what are those decisions? They are not going to be. Are they going to be in your self-interest?
Okay.
Maybe not.
The me okay. Okay. So I'll tell you this. I'll tell you like this. I'm a very pragmatic person. Okay. It's gonna
Elon
happen.
Musk is too.
Say that again.
Elon Musk is as well.
Right.
Pragmatic.
Right. So let's just speak to the reality of it. It's going to be implemented. Now, how so? Well, we do have some say in that. And this is what I'm speaking to.
Hmm.
We have to understand that this post-COVID world is not going back to a pre-COVID world. The post-COVID world is actually what's going to accelerate the implementation of these technologies. That's why you said 2030 and I said try 2021.
Hmm. Hmm.
Try 2021. Um, China has already has a 6G satellite launched. Okay, you don't even have full implementation of 5G yet. Somehow, China has a 6G satellite launched in space right now, and it has zero to do with cell phones. Let's just say that.
Complex
Welcome to
design.
2021.
I would like to ask you something that pertains to the topic, if you will.
Hmm.
And it's because you've mentioned a certain kind of pragmatism, right?
Hmm.
And then now I would have to ask, right? Because this topic says, okay, that there is perhaps a rightness and a wrongness to the human endeavor into, well, the
Hmm.
human spirit, the human psyche, the human being. Perhaps there is a right way and a wrong way, even from the point of view of utility, purposefulness. Even if you're not wanting to put any kind of moral overtones to this right versus wrong, if you want to
Hmm.
put a purpose overtone to it, that okay, well, there is a right way of using your story, your identity, so on and so forth. There are right ways and wrong ways. So how does your pragmatism play in that, around that question? Do you believe in a that it is even a plausible question to be asking, to try to find the purpose, the usefulness of your quote unquote self, your identity, and then see if it could be abused and blah blah blah? If it does exist, rightness or wrongness is something that could even be rationally attained, blah blah blah, so on and so forth. What do you think?
No, no, I think it's a great question. I think it's a question that everyone has to ask, and I think that there should come a point in time where they should then have an answer. No, I think it's no, no, not at all.
Hmm. Okay. How about any one of you, other two in the audience? Is this something that you think is a worthwhile question, or is it that's just or let's say you could take a postmodernist kind of critique that says, well, these questions are useless. There are a thousand different kinds of ways of answering them. It's just another narrative and another narrative. But at the end of the day, it's all about power and power groups, and it's about oppressor versus the oppressed. Or a
No, the
Marxist point
question
of
you're
view, it's
asking
just about classes and
is
so on and so forth. Sorry, go ahead.
no, the question you're asking is incredibly important because the question you're asking, if a child is blessed enough to ask themselves that question before they become an adult, they will become an adult with purpose in life. They will become someone that knows that in order for them to play the role that they're supposed to play in their family, in their community, in like in society as well, if they think to themselves, in order for them to be a good custodian of their family name, they have to be successful in their career. They have to do well in school. Their behavior is going to be completely different than if they let society define their role for them, especially if it's a young black kid. You really don't want society telling you anything. You want to feel as if you have a lot of worth beyond the trash and garbage that you see on TV every single day. So understanding your role is incredibly important, and almost as if you're the archetype in a story. It gives you purpose, it gives you drive, and in fact, in a lot of difficult endeavors, studies have shown that people who have a purpose are much more likely to achieve their objective than people who just go into any event, any action, and try to compete with others without any underlying reason or purpose. Purpose is incredibly important in life, very, very important. I do have to jump off, but I would like to tell everybody, please feel free to subscribe to my channel. I've got a YouTube channel, so please feel free to join. Ike, you as well. Please feel free to.
Can you post the link and then I can?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sure. Definitely,
Please.
I'll do
Thank
that.
you. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Today. And it was, a pleasure talking to all of you, fine young black gentlemen who are highly intelligent and are having great discourse as well. Great. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays as well, brother. Pleasure.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.
So Mr. Red sings the blues, and I was about to go to you as the resident. Are you a Gen Z or you're younger millennial? You're like 25, right?
I am 25. Mm-hmm.
Oh man, you're young.
So, the question surrounded whether the validity of asking this kind of a question, and then you saw the answer or the response that was given. What or how did that strike you, and what do you have to say about it?
With technology, man, I think, me personally, it's moving a lot of people out of their reasoning to live, right? Because with a lot of things, with how people are today, they take technology and they put their reasoning, their existence into their technology. They don't understand themselves without it. They don't understand how they feel without it. They don't understand how to navigate the world without it, right? These are our problems with today's youth, right? And these are things that needed to be brought up and challenged, because even as we go on as a society, our young people are dying because of the not saying the technological advances, but getting it at such a young age and not understanding how to use technology as a tool and not let it control you to a certain extent. And what we see now in the younger generation is that we are letting technology use us rather than us use. So
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that complex design probably has something to say to address that, because he's the resident technocrat here. And I also want to ask you something before we go to the next, to a guest that just joined us. I want to ask you something, because there is a question as to possible codes of conduct, if you will, like rubrics by which judgments ought to be made. We're calling it value systems. We're calling it moral of the story, right? That there is, in other words, that's the way in which we're defining the landscape of rightness or wrongness here.
Hey, Ike, real quick, I got to step away for just a few. I'm just going to mute, okay? I'm just going to mute.
All right, cool. So, Mr. Red sings the blues. You mentioned, I think in our last conversation, one of our conversations, you mentioned stoicism and things like that. So, which is kind of a code, kind of a thing to say, well, infuse your storyline with this, or let this storyline be, or let stoicism guide your identity, if you will, right? Do you believe in the validity of doing that? How strongly, or do you take it up to let's say religious faith is one level, right? Where it's like, yes, I believe in this code. It is the word of the Almighty, fallible, so on and so forth. And then all the way to, I don't believe in anything at all. Where does your stoic, let's say, prescription or diet of stoicism come in? How do you evaluate it? And then we'll go to the gentleman.
I would say it would be it would be a morale basis. There has to be a morale to your there has to be a morale to your stoicism, your own individual stoicism. I'm not going to sit here and give you mine, okay, because it is my own. Like the problem is that people have their own niche of stoicism. So for me to say my stoicism is right, you know, I would be lying to you and say that it probably is. It's probably not, because it only works for me. So, but how I can go about it is say to you as an individual, what are your morals? What do you believe is right and what do you believe is wrong? And we'll take it from there. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, so but you said work.
Mhm.
In other words, you do find it to be a utility. In other words, picking up one of these particular things, again, stoicism, whether you're right or wrong in your interpretation and your particular flavor of it, but it does work as a tool. It does do work, right?
Yeah.
That's how you look at it. Okay,
Yeah.
from a practical way. Gentlemen that joined us, I'm sorry, if you could, do you mind saying something?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm here. I'm here.
I mean, hey, I'm back.
Okay, yes. Go ahead. Introduce yourself. I'm sorry, I didn't see the name.
Smith
Wait.
Twist.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Smith West.
Complex can go first if he wants, because he was in the middle of saying something. So
Yeah, I had muted and I stepped away for just a second. I just came back. I think Red was in the middle of saying something.
Yeah, so Complex was just announcing his arrival or return, if you will. So,
Mhm.
Smith West, can you go ahead, introduce yourself, and what did you have for us this Christmas Day, sir?
okay. Well, first, thanks for letting me up on the panel. And by the way, the name's Myth Twist.
Sorry, Myth
This is
Twist.
Smith
I
Twist.
heard Smith
Yeah,
West.
I was in
thinking
the
about
chat. I was
Smith
in the
Western
chat.
or something.
Yeah, I was in the
Okay.
chat. Yeah, I'm new to your channel, but I'm not new to this space. But yeah, I subscribed to you a while back, but I live on somewhere else, so I don't usually get to catch your live streams. But this topic really caught my interest, especially where you was talking about storytelling, purpose, all these types of things. These are things that I think about a lot as well. Also, I am probably the youngest one on the panel. So I'm 23. So your conversation about
young. Oh, on the panel. Gotcha. Go ahead.
So your
Gotcha.
conversation about technology definitely caught my attention. Because
okay.
I'm in Gen Z, and I think similar to Red. I think very similar to him. I think that for the majority, technology isn't. I don't think it is something that's. I think it's something that can be mastered, like Complex said, but I don't think it's something the majority will master. So it's like you're left to the whims of those who do master it, as always. And
let me when I say I think I'll let you go on for a second, and I think Complex will probably have something to respond to that. So basically, okay, that the majority will not, right? And I just want to when you say that, I immediately think, well, the majority never comes anywhere close to controlling whatever the particular technological means of control.
And they shouldn't.
No.
Okay, so go ahead, finish your thoughts, sir, and then Complex respond.
Yeah, no, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying the majority should. I'm not of that belief at all. Because I know most people aren't supposed to. They don't want that level of responsibility anyway. That's why, even though we're in the age of information where you can literally take responsibility upon yourself and find things, most people don't. Even in my generation, where everyone thinks Gen Z's these digital nomads and we know everything, a lot of people my age don't understand how their smartphones work. And I'm not saying they need to, but so long as you can tap an app and it works, what more do you need to know, right? But the fact of the matter is in a weird way, that convenience and that instant gratification is what's making people not, it's making them lazier. It's giving them an over reliance on these types of things, like Red said. And in my generation, it's at its worst, which is why there is a lot more of a disconnect in what is the most connected world ever. So.
Okay, so instant gratification is something else you mentioned. Complex design. Go ahead and respond to that because they're.
Oh my God.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
No one's on your side today.
No. You know why, man? Okay. Because, like I said, man, I always try to like give my age. I'm 43. Okay. I started using the internet in 1988. I had my first computer in 1982 when I was 5. I had an Apple IIc. Okay, so I I've kind of been blessed, man, as a Gen Xer. And you got to understand Gen X in two contexts, right? There's Gen X proper, and then there's a group of us called the Lost Generation. You can actually look that up. Like put Gen X, Lost Generation, and you'll see that that's a extremely small group of us that were born during a very particular point in time. And all of us at our age and our stage today, we are the people who have largely created all of your tech companies. Okay, they've largely just been Gen Xers. Okay, and even what I do today, I have my own micro transport operations, essentially like a Bird Scooters. I do the whole bit, right? So we've always had this grasp of technology, but we also grew up during a time when you still had to use a phone that was connected to a cable, right, to the base, and you had to like push buttons or push a little dial. And we remember what it was like to go and play outside and not have a smartphone and just have to come inside when the street lights came on. Right? We have like a whole menagerie, dude, a whole mix of experiences pre and post technological implementation. Okay.
Mhm.
So what it is that we have is we have a unique perspective how to do this organically. That's why I say mastery, because if you say mastery, that means that you understand like the pros and the cons, and then you find that happy medium, and then you know how to like just basically zero in on it, right, and build off of that medium. Okay, this is what I talk about mastery, dude. Mastery implies that you've gone through the failure process already, so that you're not going to be doing anything that is going to see. Here's the ultimate position. The ultimate position is that you're not going to stop technology. The only thing you could do is wield it for yourself, how you best see it being implemented, because it's going to be implemented one way or the other. So you have a choice in the matter as to how are you doing it or is somebody else doing it. That's really what I'm ultimately getting at.
I'll let either one of you respond to that, but I definitely like the putting technology in that category of a force of nature. It's like, well, why are you questioning gravity and electromagnetism? Like, it's
You
gonna
can't.
happen. You can't. Don't argue with gravity. If the star is coming by and it's gonna knock us all out, like, there's nothing you can do to stop it. You just got to figure it out.
What technology is the reason why we are able to. Ike, where are you?
I'm in the Bay Area of California.
Dude, get out of here. Why did I think you were overseas?
I was overseas for some videos not so long ago, and I will be going again. I do travel.
Oh, dude,
Uh,
you're like right up the road from me, man. I'm down in near SoCal.
Oh yeah, I lived in SoCal for 16 years. I always go to
Yeah.
SoCal at least once a month. I'm actually
Oh,
flying to
okay.
SoCal on Sunday morning. I'm flying to SoCal. So
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
one more.
Nevertheless, it's technology that allows us to do this right here, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But wait, hold on. Before you answer that question, can you in the private chat, can you put your email in the chat? I actually want to talk to you, get you on my channel.
all right.
Me or Ike?
Complex design. You.
You.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. So put your email in the thing. I'll give you a call.
Okay, so basically, this idea of you use it, it's inevitable. Technology is just like one of those things that's going to happen. Do either one of you kind of agree with that as a premise, as a basic fact, as a given that, okay, well, we need to look at it like a force of nature, and we can't be acting like the same thing we can do about it, and it is just one of those other things in the universe that is not fair, and why we looking for fairness or a certain amount of control. But mastery can be you can try to master the wave, even if you're not trying to be the god of the wave, or you understand the wave as a force of nature, and you're just going to try to master it and get on that board and surf, man. What do you guys think about that particular kind of point of view?
So wait, can you just give me that question one more time?
I'll let them answer.
So no, yeah, because I was kind of summarizing Complex's particular point of view, where he's saying that basically technology should be looked at like a force of nature, like gravity, like electromagnetism, like the inevitable entropy that happens, universe moving towards disorder, whatever it may be. Whatever it is that is a given, right? The laws of thermodynamics, you don't argue with them, okay? That technology should be treated that way. They don't talk about it's like complaining about the weather or whatever. No, you just deal with the weather. It's a question of how you're going to use it, how you're going to demonstrate mastery over it. And even the mastery, perhaps somebody could push back and say, well, you're not going to get mastery. It is dangerous, so on and so forth. And then Complex might say, yes, I do know it is dangerous. It's like mastery over a wave, for example, as a surfer. You're not the god of the wave. It could always go wrong for you, okay? But the wave exists. You take it as an inevitability, but you try to use it as a source of energy, and you surf that wave, right? So, what do you guys think about that particular perspective?
Well, I would always say with technology and humans, I would say, yeah, let's use it as tools. Let's learn, let's master technology because it's important because we now live with technology. However, I would say, beyond a shadow of a doubt, always question why we are advancing a lot faster than what we need to be. Because I would say, in mastery of something, yeah, right. You would also have to question why you are doing so. Like for example, if somebody gets a black belt in martial arts, they master it for years, and they still don't understand why they got the black belt. But then they start questioning what's wrong with themselves to understand why they didn't get the black belt. And then when they get the black belt, they somewhat lose their reasoning. It's like more of like the what's next. Once I've obtained this sort of status, now what am I going to do with said status? Am I going to teach somebody else this, or am I going to use this for my own personal gain? So in essence, for me anyway, and I'm just gonna make this a brief and quick because I'm gonna get off of here.
Okay.
Is that my thing with technology is, of course, let's master it. Okay, let's work with technology, but let's also question technology itself, right? Because the more times that we try to make AI into being a human, right? Then what are we going to do when technology has human emotions and stuff like that? When is technology going to overthrow us as human beings? You know what I'm saying? But
yeah,
I know you might disagree with me.
No, I was gonna let Red.
No, Myth Twist, I believe. Do you have anything you have any response there?
Yeah. Well, firstly, I'm surprised to hear anyone say what you're saying, Red. Especially around our age, that's surprising that someone's asking why are we advancing, because I don't ever hear anyone ask that question. It's like a given, and that's what's interesting about Complex is, that mindset of, oh, it's a force of nature, but it's weird because it's like, on one hand it is, because technology comes from nature, right? Something I always ask people is, well, if we can create this technology, that means the tools always existed for us to do it. It's like Wi-Fi, for example. We may have only started using Wi-Fi a while ago, but it must have always been around and no one just used it, right? It's an odd thing to consider, because then it means, is it inevitable? If it was always there in the environment, eventually someone was going to figure it out.
There you go.
But it's weird because then you wonder, what else don't we know about? That's like Wi-Fi that we can't see. You can start going really wild with it, but I don't like to view it as inevitable because I know we have a choice. I don't have a choice over whether it rains or whether there's going to be a hurricane or if there's a thunderstorm. I don't have a choice over that, but I do have a choice about whether or not I'm going to make a smartphone. And at the end of the day, that ability to choose whether or not we want to use up finite resources in this race to advancement. Like advancement, think of the language. Advancing progress implies there's a destination. But every time I ask people what the destination is, it doesn't seem like people really know. So even if you're saying technology is inevitable, we got progress to what exactly? And that's
perfect right there. I think that the ends towards which we are moving, right? the whole thing about asking why we're why we're going, because there is this statement. I know some William F. Buckley, he talked about standing athwart history, which is basically there is this moving train moving down. People call it history. People say you need to be on the right side of it, right? You need to
You're
be on
right.
the right side of history. This train here, this thing.
That's subjective.
Well, yeah, we know that, right? And
Yeah.
that is part of it, it is wrapped up in what Red is saying, which is basically you need to ask, well, what is this train? Where is it going? Where is the station, right? Where is the destination, right? And whom will determine the rightness or wrongness of these destinations, so on and so forth. These things tend to be what we ordinarily call moral values, right? You have to have some kind of a hierarchy of choice making. They tend to look like values, right? And they tend to have to do with ends that are worth pursuing. So that is what seems to be the pushback against the just, well, it's inevitable, just go with it. Don't we have a choice, as was said by Twist?
Let me give you an example. Let me give you an example of
Before you
okay, go ahead.
I'm actually going to get out of here, guys. It's been real. I'll put my link to my channel, Red Sings the Blues, if you guys want to check it out.
I'll go ahead and I'll go sub as well.
So I will. We'll be in touch. Complex Design.
Yeah, bro. Just say I put my email in the back. Just shoot me an email, man.
Yeah. We're gonna be in touch. All right, man.
Okay.
I'll see you guys later.
We'll do.
All right.
So yeah, go ahead, sir.
Okay. So I was gonna say, so for example, with blockchain technology, for example, there is a subcategory of that technology called smart contracts.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So smart contracts enable you the ability to draft equitable blockchain-based contracts.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you're basically coding in a moral, contract,
Mm-hmm.
or a reciprocal agreement in a digital format on the blockchain.
Mm-hmm.
Right. See, so where the rubber meets the road with regards to the moral and ethical application of technology comes in how it is that we develop it and deploy it. And this 100%. Is why, right. And this is why I say, okay, well, there's one of two things can happen. See, other entities can run roughshod over you and then give you the skinny on what you're going to do in terms of how the business is going to work. Or we can also have our services that work, within the same technological environment that have more favorable rates and contracts and things of that sort. We can freely do this. This is the time to do this. And this is when we talk about, why, if you were to ask me, why do I exist? Okay. If I were to sum it up at this very moment, right? At 43 years of age on Christmas Day, 2020, based on what I know, it has a lot to do with what I've been talking about. Right? Because what am I going to pivot and then, I don't know, become something else? When I know what it is that I know due to what it is that I've experienced all this time up until this point, how are we summarizing our life's experiences to determine? Go ahead.
Stop right there, and we'll let Dr. Thunder share his thoughts. How are we summarizing again? Because it seems to, and I think this was a good topic, even though it is kind of a deeply philosophical, and then all the tangents around it are also deeply philosophical. So now you're digging very deep.
The question is philosophical.
Yeah, so it's like you're going into many deep, different rabbit holes. But you said summarize. How do we summarize our lives? That summary statement, that story, that, let's say, theme, that narrative, right? That you take along with you, that which we said has the ability to be hurt. It has the ability to feel pride, right? You feel it in your gut. You feel it in your heart. But is there something in your heart that got insulted and they got slandered? No, it is a storyline that got insulted and slandered. And there is a best way, there is a best code for that storyline. Or there is a purpose for which it is there, and the purpose could be said that for which it is best at doing. But anyways, it is rather interesting that we circled back to the this whole moral question again. But Mr. Or Dr. Thunder, Dr. Sean Thunder in the house, go ahead and say something.
Yeah. So one point about technology, I'm seeing you upgrading your your setup. I saw that video a little earlier today, and that's important. You have to keep modernizing, and you have to sort of look around in the space that you're trying to occupy and make decisions, based on what others are doing. And sometimes when we get a piece of technology, it's not that another piece of technology that serves the same function is not perfectly adequate. It's not that it's not adequate. It is, you may be trying to communicate something with the particular, technology that you've acquired. So we both have the same microphone. Red Sings the Blues had the same microphone also. You see many in the sphere, and just podcasters in general. It'd say about maybe 50% of the podcasters are probably using the same microphone. Is that because there are no other microphones? I've got a bunch of other. I'm in a studio, in a recording studio. I've got all kinds of microphones. Why did I have to get this microphone? I had to get this microphone because I was trying to communicate something, right? That probably something similar to what you want to communicate by getting that particular microphone, because I'm sure you have other microphones, right?
Yes, I do have other microphones, and there are standards that are set, however arbitrary they may be. There are standards that are set by the collective, and that you need to join. And if you're trying to communicate something, meaning I am a serious podcaster or something like that in this case, right?
Right. So, to the more general topic about technology. So I'm 46. So I'm Gen X. I am old enough to remember records when records were the only thing, not when they came back, as a retro technology, but when it was the way that all of the major releases came out. And even in 8 tracks, the studio. So my dad owned a recording studio, and he had all this equipment in our house and stuff, and he was a record producer. And so we had a 4-channel reel-to-reel recording.
Reel.
Right?
Yeah.
And then that went from 4 to 8, and then from 8 to
16
8-at.
or 8-at. Yeah, that's right.
Became the new standard. I still have a DAT, a Tascam DAT machine. To my right here is there's a mixing console. Most folks don't have a mixing console with this number of channels on it because everything is in the computer now, right?
And when you say DAT, for those of you guys who know, that's digital audio tape.
That's right. And matter of fact, that was the way that you mastered things. You mastered on DAT, and you sent that in, and then they would print the CD. So I'm going through all of this because when I'm operating inside of a DAW, digital audio workstation, and that is completely virtual software. So common ones are like Logic,
Pro Tools.
Pro Tools is common. Also,
GarageBand, whatever. Okay.
Also Ableton Live,
Ableton.
Cakewalk. There are a number of them, but the the one of the reasons why I am adept at doing that is because I actually used the physical versions of the emulated, of the emulation of the programming code that comes out as reverb or as delay, right? I actually have those units, and I had to actually patch a cable from the board into one of those units, and then out of that into something else, right, to get it where it needed to go. And so when I'm looking inside, when I'm looking under the hood, so to speak, I understand what's going on because I had a tactile experience with something,
Boom.
right? Something that I'm concerned about with younger folks is that since that was never part of their process, it can make technology completely abstract.
Yeah.
Completely abstract. Here's another example of this, and this is sort of an example, but then also sort of will pivot a little bit. So consider consider the availability. I'm a professor, a music professor, and consider the availability, the free access and availability to practically every kind of music, every artist, anytime you want to, live concerts, the entire recorded, discography of artists, all of that stuff that can be acquired so easily at either low cost or no cost. So what that tends to do is it tends to reduce the value, the not the actual value, the perceived value, right? So this music may still be wonderful and beautiful, but when it comes to studying it, I think it makes it actually harder for the students to actually absorb it in the way that I was able to absorb. I was able to absorb because I had to get my money out. I had to go and purchase the particular recording. It wasn't all over the place. And then we would have listening parties. We'd fellowship around the music. We hang out around the music. We would listen together so that I'm perceiving something different than you're perceiving. Now let's discuss what those things are, right? And so it gave a very much more tactile, real, and community sort of thing that was going on. Now the tendency is to basically for everyone to just listen by themselves because everyone can access all of this music. And so, I'm bringing this into the topic, what we're discussing here, because obviously I see some ways that this is all related. But the last thing that I'll say is just, and then I'm gonna have to split because I gotta go put my son to bed. I'll put you guys in my ear as I'm sitting in his room while he's watching his show. He's 7, by the way. And but so the other thing is, so I'm director of jazz studies at the school I work at, the college, and there are a number of faculty members, some of which are more adept to technology, and some of which are really not. And it's not just a jazz studies issue. This is a school of music issue, right? It's a college issue. And what we've sort of been slammed up against with all of the virtual instruction is a reckoning. You got to come up to snuff right now. And the way that all the classes have to be taught virtually, it's very, very challenging, and it's shocking to the system. And you can try to tell people to try to see these occurrences from afar and try to make adjustments and improve, the way that you're acquiring and updating and modernizing and always being, aware of the new developments and everything. But until something really smacks you in the face, like this pandemic, it's virtually impossible to get people to really embrace that. So anyhow, I'm really enjoying this. So I'm gonna go back down and take a listen.
100%. So I'm gonna thank you very much, Dr. Thunder. For those of you who have not, he's a fellow YouTuber. Go out and check his channel. If you can, perhaps leave your link in the chat, sir.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Thank you very
Please
much.
do.
Yes, go ahead and subscribe to Dr. Thunder. And I'm going to go ahead and say this, and then I'll pass it to you, Complex, and because he came in, dropped a lot on the table, and then and walked away. All right. He dropped the mic and walked away. Okay, but so let's try to untangle a couple of things, and I have my response, and then you guys can pick
Okay.
something to respond to. Because first thing you mentioned was signifying something with technology, right? Technology just being one of those other artifacts with which we perhaps show status, right? A status symbol, literally, right? And ways of signifying status or ways of signifying professionality or professionalism in the case of this particular microphone, okay? Because well, this is it's the microphone. It's marketed well for this kind of thing. It's the Joe Rogan uses it, and well, therefore, if you see it, that means this guy is doing something at a serious level. So that was one of the things that he talked about in terms of technology being that kind of a status signifier. And then he talked about the analog experience being more intuitive, right? That, reverb in his particular case versus the signal of a reverb in digital space. In other words, that digital tends to be more abstract. And it is true. It is true that in digital space, technology is more abstract, but in analog space, it is more intuitive. And is there a value to that? Is there a value to things being actually intuitive? Or could you say, you know what, screw it. All that intuitive stuff is just being sentimental, whatever, screw analog. Let's go digital. As a matter of fact, let's all download ourselves into the internet kind of stuff, right? And then there's an abundance aspect, which then tends to cheapen things, right? Which tends to, in other words, curation is a helpful process in terms of showing the value of certain things, such as products of culture, right? Certain cultural artifacts need to be curated. If it's an overabundance, it cheapens, blah, 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 and so on and so forth. And then there is the tragedy of the commons, if you will, which is basically that when you put things out there, you do not get compensated adequately when this kind of an internet thing happens, especially for art. It's available to everybody, but then it's like, well, it's not everybody's property, and no one really knows what's worth it, and so on and so forth. So, did you have any response? First, Complex, and then our other guest.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, and people may hate this, but technology solves a lot of those problems. Artists not being compensated. Again, we're talking about things like fractionalized ownership of digital assets and smart contracts, and this is the wave of the future. Okay, so we're like I say, we're in this time where you can actually leverage technology to fill those gaps, right, that have long existed. Because in times past, you're right, your artists were the people who would provide inspiration for a lot of people, and then those people would basically play a commercial component to some sort of larger commercial enterprise, and they would get all of the money. However, they were inspired by the broke artist, right? I come from the whole music thing. I come from the music thing, but moved into a whole different side of things, right, when it comes to tech and all that other stuff. Sorry. So the other thing is, what we have to stop doing is, what we have to do is we have to start engaging in our imagination again. Okay? Because what engaging in your imagination allows you to do is to create the possibility for new experiences. We have to stop going on previous experiences. Previous experiences gives us data, right? Gives us something to go on. However, we don't we actually wield the future. Okay,
Hmm.
so the past data is supposed to be used to better assess future trends. Okay, now not only do you assess those trends, but then if you're actually, if you have like a, if you have a, if you're participating in it, then you can better get a feel for what it's going to look like given your own activities in it.
Hmm.
Otherwise, what you're doing is you're sitting along and you're just going with the trajectory of time, and everybody else is making their moves, and then you're just being reactionary to it. You know what I mean? I'll just get this last part out. The problem is that prior to this new technological paradigm, you could do that because you could kind of sort of exist with the pace of time. But
Hmm.
see, when the pace of time is now in tune with the development of technology, and your adoption to technology isn't on pace with its pace of time, then you're at a deficit.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
there you go.
I can definitely dig that. Mr. Myth Twist, what do you have to say um about everything that first of all Dr. Thunder left us with, which was first of all technology being the status symbol, the idea of analog and something being lost if we by this kind of a technology digital focus face of technology, and which is something, by the way, I think that that is not something that is going to continue, or that can continue in perpetuity, in the sense that we actually do need a lot of, shall we say, development technologically in analog space, in the space of atoms, if you will, in real space. If we take transportation, for example, just an example, right? We do need hyperloop type things and so on and so forth, as opposed to the freeways with the bridges in the concrete and then the internal combustion engine. So if you just look at transportation as a way, as a
Mhm.
particular industry which is heavy in the world of atoms, right? We do need a lot of technological improvements in there. In our household, for example, we do need Rosie the robot, just like in the Jetsons. We need some replicators and some teleporters and that kind of stuff. So it's not just the case that the trajectory towards technological growth always being ever digital in its face, right? It's not an inevitable thing, and it's only a particular, we're just in a particular time when that tends to be everything that's going on. And I think that part of the reason why is because the world of atoms is heavily regulated. Okay. So you can run into digital space and break many frontiers really quickly. But these days, for you can take many things like the building of the Empire State Building versus how long it'll take to build it now. I'm sure we all know these stats, right? How long does it take to build the Bay Bridge versus how long and how much it takes to build it now? It always takes 100 times more. 100 times, costs 100 times more, adjusted for inflation and so on and so forth, and takes an inordinate amount of time longer. And there's all kinds of regulations and so on and so forth. But anyways, I just wanted to add that aspect to it. So the other things that were mentioned there is pretty much like, the tragedy of the commons, which makes it such that there is no, there's no value in art. And then Complex says, well, the technology is the answer to this, right? Probably things through the blockchain, smart contracts, and so on and so forth. So, Mr. Twist, if you're still there, did you have anything to add to this before we move on?
Yeah. There was a lot to to think about. The first and third thing that Dr. Thunder was talking about, I can definitely speak on. The first thing to do, the status symbol thing, that's just human nature. We've always had symbology from times when there was hieroglyphics, body language. Like, we've always used symbols as a way of expressing something. So that's all that is. Technology is just us applying the same. I don't know where it comes from, but for some reason, humans throughout time always wanted to use symbols to express something of some sort of form of status, some form of hierarchy. Hierarchy seems to be innate to us. That's why it's everywhere and has always existed. So even if it is something as simple as a microphone, or we see it with, that's what branding is. Branding and taking advantage of branding and brand imagery and logos is literally just tapping into that biological kind of that biological kind of instinctive need we have to be part of hierarchy in some way. To do with his point about the analog and what was he said, analog and digital. I'm not as sure exactly about that. I think I get when you kind of expounded on it just now. I think I get it more in the sense of you're kind of saying the physical world and the digital world are not like the physical world has to have certain advancements in order to catch up with what the digital world is going to kind of demand of it. I think that's what you were kind of getting at. And I kind of get that, which is why I think there's an issue, because the physical world is finite, the digital world isn't. So the physical world can't entirely keep up with it, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, at the end of the day, it just can't. We literally know we have finite resources. So at some point, all the things that we keep developing, it can't be sustained. And then that links to the third point, which I've thought about a lot, which is to do with what I think of as like a loss of appreciation. Now, something that I heard him say was he was talking about being Gen X. Now, as I said, I'm Gen Z, I'm 23. So there's a misconception that at my age, we don't understand these things. But when I was younger, we didn't have the internet at home. We didn't have these things at home. We didn't even have a computer at home. I remember floppy disks, and even though floppy disks may be not that old to people older than me, they're older than what people associate with people my age knowing about. Like I know about we had CDs, downloads and all those things. That was new to me as well as a kid. It was just something that I went through in childhood, but it was still new. I remember when I was in school only a few years ago, social media wasn't like how it is now. So when I was in school, I remember Instagram was coming out, and that was still weird. It was still a crazy thing even then, right? So there is, what I'm trying to say is that even in my generation, we do, I don't think the people younger than me really have this, but people a bit older than me, I'd say between my age, maybe 20 to about 30 and a bit over that, we've grown up as well seeing changes in technology similar to what he was describing Gen X has seen. So when he talks about the loss of appreciation, I completely know what he's talking about, even though I'm like 20 years younger than him. Because when I was younger, even something as simple as wanting to watch a movie, you had to get up and go to the store to do it. I didn't have immediate downloads either, and I think that's a misconception people have. Like, oh, you're 20, you had downloads from the time you was a baby. No, I didn't. No, I did not. I had to get up as well. I had to, so I appreciate that side of it. I remember, you'd have to go get a book from the bookstore. You had to. There wasn't a choice. Now you can go on Kindle, you can go on Amazon, you can get an ebook, and that loss of appreciation is definitely important. And what you said, Complex, is I believe my understanding is you think technology is going to change that. I disagree, because everything's showing it's doing the opposite. Every single time we've got these advancements, all it's doing is making actual people less and less happy and less satisfied and less connected. It's not helping people from a natural standpoint. It might be helping us from innovation. It might be helping us technologically. But the thing is these things haven't been around long enough for us to know what the long tail ramifications are. Even at my age, if we're growing up with all this technology, we ain't gotten to older years to know how that's going to affect us. We don't know. So
that's kind of the whole point of this, right? Well, okay. Let's do this. The reason why you are the age you are and that you exist in the time that you exist now and have the understanding of this existence that you just explained to me, there's a reason for that. Okay. So the thing is that what are you to do with that? I mean, it's like, okay, you can't change the fact that you exist in 2020. You can't change the fact that companies like Google and Facebook and Apple and Huawei and Tesla, and you can't change the fact that Starlink satellites are getting launched up into space. You can't change these things.
Well, I mean,
wait. Let me just get this out. You can't change these things. Understand this. You cannot change this. Sooner you understand that you can't change where you are today, the fact that you exist, the only thing you can do is work with it. You're not going to come in and change the shit. It's not going to happen. It's not going to. It's not going to happen. The only thing you can do.
That's a misunderstanding of what my point is. It's not. It's not about whether or not it's inevitable or changing or not. That's not the point. The point is that I'm just saying that the way we look at these things needs to change. Because at the end of the day, it is having negative ramifications on people, and that is literally proven. So that goes back. It's inevitable. It's not in the long term. I mean, in the short, social media hasn't even really been around in its current form for that long, and it's already having negative effects on people. I mean, so
hold on a second. Hold on, guys. Let me. Because I think this is one of those things where there is because there are many parallel tracks in this landscape, and if somebody is on one track and someone is on another track, where these two things are both correct, you know what I mean?
Well, that's why I wanted to clarify my position. Here's the thing, right? So YouTube is not going to go anywhere, right?
That's debatable, but
well, no, it's not going to go anywhere. It's owned by the Alphabet company, which do you have any idea how much money in hedge fund investment?
Let's just say complex. Depends on your time. You have to depends on your time frame question, because yes, it will go somewhere.
Well, no. What I want to say is this: I'm trying to contextualize this. Okay, these types of platforms aren't going anywhere. What you personally, what you do with your channel and what you disperse in terms of information, however, has an impact. And this is what I'm talking about. The technology is not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere. It's all about what you're going to do with it.
Okay. So I wanted to ask this question because I think it does relate tangentially upon this. How does one look at technology in terms of accepting it? Is it good, bad, skeptical? How do you play, pragmatic, so on and so forth? Basically, it has to do with this digital versus analog landscape, this world of data, world of zeros and ones versus the world of atoms, right? And I'm thinking that part of the problem, generally speaking, is that there has not been a lot of advancement in the world of atoms. And I reviewed a book by Peter Thiel, a few videos. Check that out. The book is called 0 to 1. Check 0 to 1 out on my channel. And basically saying that the room that you're in right now, if you take away the screens, that room could be from 1982 or something, right? That it is not very different in the room around without the screens, that everything seems to have happened in the screens, in the digital space. And there is indeed, beyond the question of, because people tend to go to, and I think that Mr. Myth, I believe, Myth Twist mentioned that the finiteness of the physical space. Okay, people tend to go that, okay, well, we picked all the low-hanging fruit in the world of physics, and the world of biology is hard because we reverse engineering, and things are just hard. You can't expect us to that kind of a thing, right? So even if I grant you that, but because I think that is debatable, okay, I think that's debatable, and that there are structural reasons why the free, it's not incentivized, pushing the boundaries of knowledge, if you will, is not incentivized, partly due to not having an independent financial funds within academia, so on and so forth. But also, even if I were to give you that, there is still the idea of government and society, the socio-political realities that make it such that it is harder to build certain things today than it was in the 50s. You know what I mean? It's like, it is literally harder and more expensive, more time consuming to build certain things than before. And I do 100% agree that we need to make this technological breakthroughs, because you cannot copy the way in which the West has lifted up all boats, anyway, if you will, the rising tide, with the same old technology, with the same old fertilizers and insecticides and internal combustion engineering and electricity coming from coal and so on and so forth. You cannot globalize copying that over and over and over again. But when people talk about things like nuclear, it's always like, you can't say that. In other words, there are certain objective reasons why technological growth is not going on in the space of atoms. What do either of you have to say about that?
I would
agree with that.
Oh, you got to go ahead.
No, you can go ahead. I'll add to it, but I was just gonna say, yeah, I do agree with that.
Okay. I would say that one of my good friends, so he has an analog studio. So his studio is all it's you can look him up. His name is Adrian Young. He matter if you guys watch the Netflix series Johnny Cage, the Marvel series, he was the one that composed the music for it. If you listen to that music, it's all acoustic instruments. It's analog. Okay. Right. Because if you go to his studio down in Highland Park, in Los Angeles, it's an entire analog studio, complete with, reel to reel tape mastering and the whole. That's how he does it. Right. However, what he creates with that is distributed in a digital medium. It's distributed in a social media format. So, for example, if you were to look up the Luke Cage soundtrack on YouTube, you will have it right there. But guess what? The actual music itself was produced with analog instrumentation. See, this is about creative application. It's about, once again, how we're choosing to wield this. We can freely use analog equipment, analog instrumentation, analog fill in the blank, and utilize a digital medium for distribution. This merely becomes out of the mind at this point.
I 100% see what you're saying there. And I believe that Myth Twist was just wanting to agree with the whole thing that I pushed forward regarding the fact that we're not advancing technologically. So do either one of you have, because we're at the 2.5 hour mark, and we have a bunch of people having fun in the chat over there. Shout out to Dreamstar Kicks.
I can't even see it.
Shout out to Good Men, Q Dog, and yeah, shout out to Kwesi Jackson, Q Dog, for the Cash App. All right, thank you guys very much for doing that. Okay, now I would like to ask if either one of you has any closing remarks. And by the way, anybody can jump in as we because I'm going to ask you for closing remarks. Going to finish out the little slide thing in terms of summarizing what this whole thing was about, to the degree to which it was about anything. But any closing remarks regarding identity, regarding the aspects of identity that we brought in? We talked about technology, success, right? We talk about the societal roles, how much we accept certain inevitables, such as technology, or is it hurting something in our identity? Is there something to be held on to? Are there values by which we can judge the right structures of an identity, of a storyline, of a narrative, or are there not? Anyway, so any closing remarks on that whole smorgasbord of stuff I just threw on the table there?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'll go ahead and give you my closing remarks on that. No, the reason why I kind of hedged my position on this conversation on technology is because of what's happened here in 2020 with COVID. Okay. If you look at the markets and how everything has pivoted, everything has moved towards some sort of technical solution of some kind, whether it was medical, whether it was educational. My 9-year-old daughter goes to school from home now. Right. I've seen what took place when it was told that basically I had to stay at home. Okay. That means that the stopgap was technology. You know what I mean? It's like I was like, okay, it's here. It's here. Right. I'm looking at Tesla, an electric car manufacturer whose stock is far above and beyond GM and Ford, your traditional U.S. car manufacturers. Why is this? because they have future. Their technology is staked on the future, and these dinosaurs have an old business model. Airbnb, Uber to some extent still. Okay, these are your largest automotive companies and real estate companies, and they don't own any of it. Why? Because of technology, an app that people have on their phone. Okay, Bitcoin just clipped 24K today. Okay, its total evaluation now eclipses that of JP Morgan. I need you to let that one marinate. Welcome to the fourth industrial revolution. This is our existence now. So when you say, well, why do you exist? Well, they contextualize it in the time that you're in, and maybe you'll start to get a picture if you don't have one. And maybe if you started to have one, you got a clearer one. Ike, I appreciate you, brother.
100%, sir. Shout out to Complex Design. Go out and check out his channel, Black Brain Trust, I believe, right? And go ahead,
sir.
please.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. And also, Mr. Myth Twist, you want to give any closing remarks regarding this very complex topic that I threw out there? Any of your thoughts here?
Well, I mean, identity is just, I was saying in the chat earlier, but I'd see it very similar to the story thing you were saying. In the end of the day, you're like a protagonist in a sense, but you're part of a narrative that was already established, and that's not in a defeatist way. It's just the honest truth. Like when you're born, your parents kind of act as like the prequel or prologue to your story. They set up what events are going to come, and then you eventually at some point kind of take on those things. But in certain ways, there's certain parameters set before you have any choice. Before you're an adult, you have to follow the ways of other people first, and you just have to hope that those people you're around have got enough sense, so that you're set up in a good way. Unfortunately, sometimes you aren't, sometimes you are, but I'd say ultimately, in terms of all this stuff to do with technology and our place in the world, and who are you or whatever, in the deepest philosophical manner, it's a question. You referenced Plato, Plato's Republic. It's a question that's been asked for thousands of years. It's an old question, and people still are asking it. So clearly, whether we're in the first, second, third, or 25th industrial revolution, I don't think humans are going to ever stop asking that question. And it really comes down to me, the way I look at it is, I look at nature, and I always look at nature for where I think objective truth is, because outside of nature, everything else is prone to being influenced by man. So if, in nature, if I, like, for example, if someone says killing is unnatural, I just look at nature and see that clearly it isn't, because, so that's where I look for, and then I build my beliefs based on that. So this question, I look at nature and I think, okay, well, what do humans have? They have certain biological imperatives naturally, and they're universal. Everything else is a subjective belief. It's a philosophy. It's a social construct. You got it from your environment. I can't trust those things because they didn't come from, they're prone to change. They're not objective, is what I'm trying to say. So when I think of this question, I just think of, well, what am I naturally designed to do? What's your biological functions? And then based on that, what meaning do you find outside of that? But I just realized that the meaning I find in those things, at the end of the day, is subjective, and it's mostly an illusion. I can say that my purpose is to, create some disruptive technology that will save humanity, and maybe it will, but at some point there will be another problem, and humanity is going to have another issue. And so it's, the way I see it is that find whatever purpose you want for your life, but kind of realize that at the same time, in a weird way, we're all kind of the same in a strange way. But yeah, that's I'm not sure if that made entirely a lot of sense, but yeah, that's how I kind of think about it. So I appreciate you for having me on and for having conversations like this. It's really refreshing. So thanks.
Oh, well, thank you very much. And thanks for contributing to the conversation, Mr. Myth Twist. Anytime. And yes, no, what you did say had a few anchors, one of which was nature. you look to nature, and you find therein guardrails, okay? Guardrails to try to use to try to best approximate what one needs to do out here, okay? And you also talked about the fact that we do have preceding stories, what I called earlier contributions from the social aspect into our particular story. So you have certain attributes that are native to you. You're born in a certain country, born into a certain family. The country and the family have stories already. So you're going to be, that's definitely going to be part of your story, which goes into your identity. What exactly is that for? It has the ability to be hurt. It has the ability to feel slander and shame, but it also has the ability to feel pride. Okay. It is that aspect of your software. Okay. That has a narrative structure. It has a theme. Okay. You're playing a role in a play. Okay. It is the role that you're playing. And there are many plots and subplots and many roles to play within your family or within your nation and so on and so forth. What is the story in your head? Why does it exist? How can it be used or abused? Okay. And Complex Design, before he left, had a way of completely categorizing his views, which has to do with contextualization. When you're asking this kind of a question as to what is the right role of the self, what is the right role of my identity, my story, my narrative, the theme by which I live my life, right? If you're going to be asking that, always put it within the context of the particular technology, environment, socio-political, and otherwise kind of environment that you're in, the milieu that you are in, because that is going to determine and influence a lot of the aspects of the storyline. Okay. The storyline is based on actual chronology and then also the ongoing storylines that are already there in the family you're born into, the nation you're born into, and so on and so forth, ladies and gentlemen. So this was meant to be some Christmas fun. Okay, well, what does Ike do for fun? Well, this is the kind of stuff that I like to do for fun, in the sense that have a question that may seem rather grandiose. As a matter of fact, is a rather grandiose question. As the last speaker concluded with, these are questions that have been asked for 2,500 years and so on and so forth. So ask these grandiose questions, come up with a sound framework and a solid hypothesis, go through the process of establishing the validity of the question, the reason why the question is not ridiculous, right? So we asked, like, why would you even be asking why this thing exists? And we said, well, because it is tool-like, it does do things in the world, and it can be sufficiently distinguished from other things which are in the environment, okay? That it is kind of different from instincts and intuitions, which are perception or perceptual like. And then also it is different from desires and drives, right? That this story, this identity is different. It's not that quick response. It is not the logical side. It's not the most logical thing. It is not the quickest thing in terms of reaction, but it is an impetus for doing things. It does cause you to do things. It does serve as a motivator. So what is it good for? And I say that stories are good for the moral of the story, and that the moral of the story is values, ends that are worth pursuing. So what should one do now? Okay. So if after having a couple of hours of this conversation, I've finally been able to, let's say in a succinct way, wrap it up with the last paragraph that I just had, right? What does one do? Well, if this is true, then it makes sense that one should look at all the plots and the subplots of your life, okay? And find the values that are underneath it. And inspect the major plots and the subplots. You may have a major plot that says you are a victim. You may have subplots that the role that you play with your mom, for example, in which you are serving the role of a survivor. And that's kind of the theme around which you put your actions on how you view yourself in that context, so on and so forth. So in all these plots and subplots, what is a value that you could say? Is it really about honesty? Is it about bravery? Where does it lie? Okay. What is the moral to the story that you're telling? All right. Because we're asking, well, what is to be done if this particular framework that I built out in this conversation, okay, if it is valid, then what is one to do about it? Well, it says go in there and chip away at things. It's a question of getting rid of as opposed to a question of finding something. In other words, it's like saying we found a spoon. If you recall the whole analogy we were using, we're saying that this self is tool-like. So we found a spoon. We don't know what a spoon is for. And we're asking, okay, what are the possible things that it could be used for? And then by a process of elimination, we find the best thing that it could be used for, and we say that is its purpose. Okay, so simple logic here. We find something, did some archaeological dig, and we found a spoon. In this case, we found a self, a story-based self. Has this identity. It can be attacked. It can be used wisely or unwisely. It can cause you to do stupid things. It can cause heartbreak and heartache and pain and this and that and the other. It can cause people to do great things in the name of things such as upholding the family name, upholding your particular claim to fame, whatever it is that you're doing, or upholding the name of Sparta and kicking the guy into the well, right? So idea is, it is tool-like. Therefore, what is it for? And then we say, well, what can it be for? And by process of elimination, find out what it is best for, because things are said to be used for what they're best for, right? So it's like, okay, if it is all true that yes, finding values is the end goal, the be all end all about this whole game here, then what is one to do? Okay, basically, I'm saying that one is to remove the clutter. Okay, remove the clutter. What could be clutter? Okay, any aspect of yourself, any aspect of your identity, any aspect of your ego that has attachment to material things, for example. And you can easily test this. You just go through your head and you mentally check, what feelings do I get in my body and what image and storyline plays in my head when I think about not having certain things? How much of my particular storyline is dependent upon what I have? Okay? And to the degree to which you are tied to that, is just another thing to protect, another way in which you could be attacked and controlled. In other words, minimalism is almost a word that could be used here. You're trying to chisel away to find the bare bones, the bare values in this particular narrative, the moral of the story. Is it about honesty? Is it about sacrifice? Is it about valor? Is it about good and evil? Is it the hero's journey? Okay. And then everything else to which your ego, yourself, your story is attached is only an opportunity to be used by it. Let's say to be used by your love of money because your identity is too attached to it. You'd be used by your love of certain kind of lifestyle or, right? And, right? The idea is, okay, well, what is the core thing? And a value that I can say, well, it is hard to attack a value, right? It is hard for the value to feel the whimsical and flimsy nature of the world because things will come and go, right? Positions will come and go, status will come and go, and things always lose their shine, their novelty, and so on and so forth. But having a value, a goal that is worth pursuing tends to outlast all of this. And I say that the story that you are, right? The narrative that you are is only there in order to showcase a set of values. And that everything else is superfluous, is redundant, and it's just clutter. Every kind of attachment that you may have to other things that are ancillary to the value. In other words, the material is only the signifier in the case of materialism, right? Material is only the signifier. You should find out, well, what am I trying to display? What value is it that I'm trying to represent by having my personality attached to material goods? Again, I feel good. My body feels good. I have a good reverberation in my head. The images in my head and the talk in my head is in congruency with the story that I have about myself when I get this material goods. Okay, the question is, what is the moral of that story? What is the real virtue that material goods represent? It could be things, for example, such as hard work, industriousness, value, given value for value, being seen as a valuable person. So find the value in there and focus on that as the story, as opposed to having Storyville be populated by only the symbols of the value, which, for example, could be material goods. So, yes, that is a whole lot of words, a whole lot of prescription at the end of something that is quite speculative. Young Swift in the house says self-validation. Okay, and Dr. Mad said, yep, this is right on the money. It is through the values that we uphold that we can quantitatively establish our own evidence and the full establishment of our existence in heaven. Right? Basically saying that it is the values that is the point of your whole story. Your whole I am a proud American born to the X family, and this X family has this ongoing story going centuries back that I am now proud to be a participant in, proud to be a recipient of this particular honor, proud to be seen in my physical grandeur. Yes, I am taller than average. Economic status is such and such. All these different addresses in the matrix of you, right? Your matrix of you has a social aspect, okay? A natal aspect. You're born in a certain place. It has a certain story. Family has a certain story. And then it has certain physical aspects regarding how your particular physical attributes are viewed socially, okay? Yes, I have social cachet in certain things. I won the genetic lottery, so on and so forth. All that stuff has addresses, okay? In this matrix, which is called you, your story. And then you weave a story through it. It may be the story of grandeur, maybe the story of survival, or so I'm a survivor story, or the hero's journey, or whatever it may be. That this story is really all about the values, and that it is prone to being misused if you are in a position where you have too many extra things that are outside just pure values. If you have too many of those extra things in your story, then you are prone to misusing the story. And misuse looks like being open to attack. That's what I'm saying, okay? The more you have your ego, your story, your narrative, your identity tied to things that are not essential, the more you have the ability of being attacked there, okay? If your ego is attached to something, that's just an opening for an attack and can be controlled by there and can be used by there, and it is a misuse of this particular tool. Let's call the tool Storyville. Let's call it identity, that part of your psyche which has a story aspect to it. So, ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, yeah, this is kind of the underlying impetus for this conversation. It's just that this is something that I've always been thinking about ever since I was a teenager. I've always had this question as to why the self, because I always noticed that it does come with a lot of costs, right? Your particular storyline, your identity, right? That thing that you're attached to comes with a lot of costs. Okay? Therefore, what is its use? Because generally speaking, when you have something that is very expensive, very costly, very front and center, something such as your identity, which is part of the program, right? Then you have to ask, well, what is it for? It's like finding a hand, which is something else that evolved along with us and that we just found here. We found a hand, and we also found that we like story identities. So we can ask what the hand is for, so we best use it and not misuse it. So same thing goes on with the world of stories. In other words, your consciousness that has to do with images in your head and the talk in your head and how they relate to these feelings in the body. In this particular case, the narrative. We should be asking, well, what is it for? What is it best for? And how do we not misuse it, ladies and gentlemen? So, let's go ahead and read this. Shout out one more time again to Young Swift. He said, essentially, if you don't like it, rewrite the script. For the most part, because it is best to at least know the script, because everyone is playing a script. It is best to know what it is. Find out, because everyone is playing out this drama in their head. Okay? And it is best to be at least conscious of it. Okay? Because then you at least know what's coming. You can at least know the possibilities. If you're playing the hero's journey, if you're playing the tragic hero, a lot of us play the tragic hero, but we play it unconsciously. It's like, well, you know, there's going to be some tragedy involved if that's the game you're playing. If you're playing the villain or the anti-villain or something like that, go ahead and know the game you're playing. Okay? And see if it is possible that you can rewrite it, or at least see what the essential aspect of it is. What is the value in there that this whole thing is all about. Okay? And Dr. Mad says, man, you truly have gotten this so correct. These ideas you're espousing have not been integrated to the highest levels of psychological development at West. Yeah, because these are philosophical ideas, right? So I've always had this idea: why does the self exist? Okay, that was just a little bit of my engineering mind and also my creative philosophical side, wanting to play around with this thing, and then this was about perhaps, as I said, maybe 15 years ago, 18 years ago, that I first kind of got obsessed a little bit with this question. And my current framework is this: that you exist in order to store values. That you are a story and a narrative, and the purpose of you, the story, is the moral of the story. If you are a story, then what is the purpose of a story? The purpose of a story is the moral of a story. The moral of the story is about values. Everything else can just be an added liability, okay? Don't use a spoon to both dig a hole in your yard and also eat soup. It is best for eating soup. So there's this tool called yourself. It can do many things, but it is best if you keep it simply to the acquisition and propagation into the future of values. That is what it is there for in the cooperative and competitive landscape of evolution, right? Out here in the ecosystem, competing against other people and competing against the environment, you have certain genes. They display themselves in certain phenotype. You have certain genes that also display themselves in terms of what we may call instincts, intuitions, drives, and so on and so forth. But we also have this storyville, which is a cause of action out there in the world and a motivation. It plays too in the evolutionary landscape of competition and cooperation. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for staying all the way through. And we had a significant amount of people in here, significant for the channel, has how it has been doing so far, and so on and so forth. Given the very heady conversation, because this one was unapologetically heady. Okay, we just went there. We're like, why do you exist? Oh my God, Jesus, come on, bro. What do you mean? Why are you trolling me, Ike? What do you mean, why do I exist? And then we just went directly into it without any apologies, without any kind of backstepping. No, it wasn't clickbait. It was a way of having a conversation on epistemology and metaphysics and also ethics from a fundamental point of view, okay? If we take space, time, and causality, the physical universe as a given, and we take the consciousness as a given, and we're just looking at the programs that run in the consciousness, there's this one called the story of you, your identity. Why is it? What is it best for? All right? And definitely thank you guys, Dream Star Kicks, with all the nice comments and for joining in. Young Swift always holding it down, the unspecialist. So, ladies and gentlemen, as we close this out, let me ask for a 1 in the chat, okay? If conversations of this sort, and by this sort I mean specifically rather philosophical in the sense that there was no point. I did not say, hey, how to close the deal, or hey, how to work 16-hour work days. In other words, a conversation that presents another aspect. So conversations that presents this aspect being aesthetics, philosophy, intellectual pursuits, just for the pure fun of them. Hey, it's Christmas Day. Let's put on the mistletoe on our lapel and let's wax poetic. Let's give a 1 in the chat if these make sense to you, okay? Are these fun for you? What do they represent? Because for me, it is fun. And if you guys are not having fun, then what's the point of doing it, right? So waxing poetic and waxing philosophic about rather profound questions that would say, well, how dare you even ask that? Okay, that for me is fun. And okay, we're seeing 1s in the chat. And thank you very much for your contribution. We will continue to fight the battle within. And shout out to Jessica X in the house holding it down. You guys are already subscribed to Jessica X, doing good work out there, doing the Lord's work, as they said. Young Swift, Q Dog. Shout out to everybody that hit up the Cash App. Okay. And Dr. Mad says it's precisely the psychology has lost its intimacy with philosophy. Yes, yes, yes. We definitely agree on that. And I think that there needs to be more of a unity to knowledge, more of consilience. And that is what the philosophical lifestyle upholds, proposes, tries to make manifest in the world, which is a more unified view of things. That rather than just have things be separate islands, you have your spirituality island, you have your economic and money island, you have your technological island, psychological island, and then you have your underlying physical, let's say metaphysical understanding of the world island, and then your ethics island floating around without any kind of a unity to them. Okay? The philosophical lifestyle says, hey, have some unity, fighting the battle within. As usual, thank you for joining me on a Christmas. A very good showing out here on a Christmas where I just wanted to enjoy the company of you guys during my lonely Christmas here, have a philosophical conversation about who you are and why you exist. Because when you know why something exists, when you know its use, you can avoid its abuse. Quintessence, the quintessential, says Dr. Thunder. Ever forward, ever present. Word 'em up, 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 word 'em up. Shout out to Damian Marley in the house. We just listened to him earlier. Christ fed the multitude with only one loaf of bread. Poor people, there is something for you. Don't let the pressures of the system get up on your head. Poor people, there is something for you. Mankind cares not for his sisters anymore. Still, there is something for you. Written in the book of life, we shall live forevermore. There will be something for you. Rasta works are manifest and it a blossom and a bloom. Nature always take its course, the tide is rising with the moon. It only take a spark to put the fire to the fuel. What is hidden in the dark shall be revealed so very soon. Tell Pharaohs free the prisoners from the dungeons and the doom. Word 'em up, word 'em up, word 'em up, word 'em up. Peace.
On the shore, relentless in the war, the legions in our hearts, shed waters in our balls, the spirit and the flesh, the emotions that arrest, the cerebral will contest, propelling the unrest. Preachers and bandits with means underhanded, the teachers pedantic and lack understanding. So sweep out the sand with the broom in your hand, stand up, make we burn Babylon. Guess I can give the world to you, but the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. Cause I can give the world to you, but the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. With the semblance of a blaze, with gratitude and rage, we touch another page with delirious delight, impervious to light. This vitality and might encourages the flight. Preachers and bandits with means underhanded, the teachers pedantic and lack understanding. So sweep out the sand with the broom in your hand. Stand up, make we burn Babylon. Guess I can give the world to you, but the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. Guess I can give the world to you, but the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. Give me falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the wind will fight the battle within. Cause I can give the world to you, but the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the wind will fight the battle within.